IB Nation, what's going on? It is Thursday, February 2nd. That's Ryan Roberts. I'm Brian Driscoll, and we're going to have to call a little bit of an audible on what we were going to talk about today, because what we were going to talk about today was the Notre Dame defensive line. We'll find out if we'll have some time to get there. I think that we will. But, Ryan, there's obviously been some breaking news that we're going to discuss. I've been on the phones for the last, 45 minutes trying to figure everything out. And we're going to kind of just give you the latest of what we know and what we can share. And obviously what we know is that Notre Dame offensive coordinator Tommy Rees is expected to be in Tuscaloosa today, where he will interview for the offensive coordinator job at Alabama. Basically what we can say is Nick Saban reached out to Tommy Rees this week. They spoke a little bit yesterday. Saban expressed his interest in Rees, and today Rees is going down there for a formal interview and to see if it's a job that he would want or not. Talking to sources, this is not a situation where he is going down there and it is a formality that he's going to go interview and get the job. What I can say is this, that the report from Chris Lowe of ESPN that Tommy Rees has emerged as the top candidate is accurate. That is accurate. This is who Nick Saban is zeroed in on, right? He's looked at a couple guys. He's zeroed in on Tommy Rees right now, and he is the top target. Does that mean that Tommy Rees is definitely going to leave? It does not. I'm not saying he isn't going to leave. I'm not saying he's going to stay or he's going to leave. I'm just telling you it's not a formality. It's not a foregone conclusion that he's going to go down there and take the job. That's going to be determined by kind of how today goes. But, obviously, Ryan, this is a big news for Notre Dame, and it's a very interesting development. So we're just going to kind of dive into all of it and just really get into what this means for Notre Dame, what this means in a lot of different ways. So first and foremost, Ryan, just your overall thoughts on the news that came out today.
I mean, coaching world works in very quick and mysterious ways, doesn't it? I mean, this is something that we didn't really have on our radar, like we always just thought, that there would obviously, I didn't expect Tommy Rees to be at Notre Dame forever. And we'll see obviously what the timeline is for him to continue to be at Notre Dame. But I mean, it's very interesting that Tommy has quickly become the guy on Alabama's board. It's obviously, you're kind of hearing some names floated out there, like the offensive coordinator at Oklahoma that was down at Ole Miss with Lane Kiffin. And you're hearing a bunch of different names. Obviously, the Washington offensive coordinator was a guy, Grubb, that had just been kind of linked to Alabama a little bit. And he announced that he was going back to Washington. So just interesting kind of seeing the steps in the process, I guess, to get to where we are now, where Tommy Rees has now become the top of the board guy for Alabama. I'll be interested to see how things materialize over the next few days, obviously, and see what comes of it. But it's very interesting because it was just something, I guess, that I wasn't expecting. I had kind of put it on the back border and just thought that Tommy was going to be here in 2023. I hadn't thought too much deeper into it, but it's going to be interesting, man, because it's a very different move for Nick Saban in the sense that going from Bill O'Brien to Tommy Rees is like polar opposites, in my opinion, as far as some structural stuff, but also just kind of where they are in their careers. You know what I mean? Like it's almost a 180, in my opinion.
Personality-wise as well.
Yes, absolutely.
So I think the one thing for sure that we do know is obviously that I think it says a lot about look, we've said this for a while. And a lot of Notre Dame fans don't want to believe this, and they have continued to not want to believe this. But Tommy Rees's perception, and I've said this for a while, Ryan, his perception in the college football and NFL world is completely different than his perception from Notre Dame fans. Completely different. And I think this year is a perfect example. I've had conversations with several people outside the Notre Dame program, and they look at it as a minor miracle that Notre Dame was able to win 9 games this year with what they had going on at quarterback, and for half the season, what they had going on at wide receiver. The defense was solid, wasn't nearly as good as it had been in the past. You had an offense. You had a very tough schedule this year in many instances, but what you had was an offensive system that at times was really good, and other times it was inconsistent. Right? And we've talked about that. The belief is that that in this instance, Ryan, that the struggles on the offense had more to do with the quarterback. That's the belief that people have is, you had him at quarterback and Drew Pine at quarterback, and you're going to struggle to move the ball. But look, this isn't something that should be new to people. We've been saying for a while, the perception of Tommy Rees outside of Notre Dame fandom is a whole lot different, and he's a lot more respected than he's been. I mean, going back to 2020, I had NFL people telling me how much NFL teams liked the stuff he was doing pass game wise, schematically with a limited quarterback is what a lot of people felt. Most people didn't view Ian Book as a third or fourth round pick like Sean Payton, right? I mean, that's just the reality of it.
Well, and last year too, Brian, I mean, there was obviously the old conversations about, Miami's interest in Tommy Rees, the University of Miami, in LSU wanting, Brian Kelly wanting to bring him down to LSU. Like, I mean, this isn't the first time we've heard Tommy Rees's name talked about in these circles. And obviously the respect is there if he keeps getting mentioned in that realm, right? So I do think that the perception is a little higher than what the landscape of Notre Dame fandom kind of paints him as, And I mean, I've had my back and forth with, just kind of his abilities as an offensive coordinator. Like, I'm not going to paint it, right? Like, there's been some good things that I really like. There's been some things that I think are very inconsistent and a little maddening at times. But regardless, the perception that is outside of the Notre Dame sphere is that Tommy Rees is a smart, young offensive coordinator that has a lot of ability. And again, Nick Saban wouldn't be making this move now and trying to, obviously, well, not trying, getting him down to Tuscaloosa to interview if there wasn't a serious respect on his part, because Nick Saban's a control freak. Let's call it what it is, right? I mean, he's a great coach, but he wants things done his way. And obviously, cycling in on a guy like a Tommy Rees, obviously he has a high opinion of his abilities as an offensive coordinator.
Yeah, there's a question here from Brandon Plensner, a super chat, so I want to bring that up since it's pertinent to what we're talking about here. He says, isn't Freeman giving Tommy full autonomy and freedom on offense? Why would he entertain this? Well, it's a simple answer, Brandon, and we may not like it, but it's Nick Saban. It's Alabama. I mean, everyone here in this chat always tells us Alabama this, Alabama that. Alabama's great. You can't recruit like Alabama. You can't do this, can't do that, right? That's what everybody tells us. So when that program, a coach who's won 7 national championships, comes calling, you look at his last. So he's had 5 offensive coordinators in 7 years. Those 5 guys are currently the head coach at Ole Miss, the head coach of the New York Giants, the head coach of the University of Texas, the head coach of the University of Maryland, and I'm trying to think who am I missing?
Bill O'Brien.
Bill O'Brien, who's now the offensive coordinator for the New England Patriots.
Yep.
Right? So, like, if you're a coach and you're considering, hey, I have goals, what have the Notre Dame offensive coordinators done? Right? So, one went left to be the head coach at UMass. I don't know where the heck he is now. Right? One is currently an offensive coordinator at LSU, so lateral move. One is currently unemployed, right? And then there's Tommy Rees. One's the head coach in the University of Miami of Ohio. So the track record of promotion at Alabama is significantly greater than it is in Notre Dame. That has to be considered. If you're being objective, you have to look at that, right? And so now I'm not saying he should take it. I'm not saying that at all. Matter of fact, and we'll get into this in a little bit, I don't think he should take it, and I'll get into reasons why. But to answer Brandon's question, why would he entertain this? Well, he's going to get a big pay raise, and that would be one reason. But again, it's Alabama, right? If you're someone who wants to kind of have that opportunity, then that's what you do. And then the other thing too is, look, the way that Notre Dame fans in this chat are talking about Tommy Rees, that's another reason to consider leaving. Right? Yeah. He's been getting crapped on for a decade by Notre Dame fans. Let's be real about that. Right?
There's never any middle ground with it either.
No,
it's either you hate him or you love him. Like, it's just
right.
like, no.
Right. there's no rationality with some people. Now, I don't think that's factoring into why Tommy Rees is considering the job. I haven't talked to a single person about that. But the fact of the matter is, you that's something that I look at and I think about. So, look, the reality is it's Alabama. And if Alabama I mean, think about it. If the best program in your profession or the best place in your profession called and said, "Hey, we want to talk to you," you're going to listen. And my
100%.
understanding is that's all this is it's like, look, Saban wants to talk to you. You go down there and you hear what he has to say. And now, does that mean he'll take the job? I honestly don't know. Does that mean he'll turn down the job? I honestly don't know. And that's not me telling you something, but I really know what's going on, but I just can't tell you. There's things I know about this situation that I can't share, but that's something that I promise you I'm truthful on. Or not truthful, and I'm always truthful if I say something, but I'm being open and honest about is a decision hasn't been made as far as I know, and that's what today is going to be about. Now, I do expect things to move quickly, one way or the other, Ryan, and we'll find out very soon. And so,
well, Brian, we've even talked about the recruiting side of things with like the whole like not directly with this, but the whole Alabama influence, right? And I mean, I'm a lifelong Notre Dame fan. My fandom is as pure as you can find, right? But if Nick Saban called me, like I would listen, right? If I was a recruit, if I was a coach, if I was any person, I mean, it's Nick Saban. He has that type of respect too. And I just want to say, because I saw something in the chat, I'm not personally saying that there's no middle ground. I'm saying most people in whole either are here with Tommy Rees or they're way left, right? Like there's not much middle ground where you could say he's done some good things, hasn't done some great things. There's still some things that needs to improve on, and it's okay to have that conversation, right? But at the end of the day, yeah, Tommy Rees is a Midwestern guy, went to Notre Dame, graduated from Notre Dame, has coached Notre Dame since 2017. Like, he's a Notre Dame guy, right? But at the end of the day, Nick Saban deserves that respect. He does. I mean, if he called anybody, they would pick up the phone. And it doesn't mean that he'll necessarily take the job. That just means that you listen, and there's nothing wrong with listening. There's not. When a legend calls you, you listen, in my opinion.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. There's no doubt about that. So one of the questions that we had here about what somebody just said is Josh Buffo, the motivational business maker, asked, you said it, Brian, 5 OC in 7 years for Bama, having coaches get promoted or called is a good thing for Notre Dame, reload and go on and win on the field and recruiting trail. Let's go. Again, the comment here is assuming that he's going to leave, and I would say that that's probably not a good assumption yet at this time. I think, again, I truly don't know which way this is going to go, and until the interview happens, we really don't know. So another question is, somebody says, Brandon Plenzer says, since Rees has initiated this, can we talk OC replacements or favorites for the position? Rees hasn't initiated this. This was initiated by Nick Saban, and so. Right now, I don't really care to get into the conversation of possible replacements because right now, Tom Rees is Notre Dame's offensive coordinator. I will say this, in all honesty, that when Ryan and I are done with the show today, we're going to sit down and come up with a list of guys that we're going to study in case this does happen, and we'll be prepared to move on because I'm not sitting there saying, oh, he's not leaving. No way, is Tommy Rees going to leave. I'm just telling you it's not a guarantee that he's going to take the job either. And so we'll have to see how all that develops. And so, yeah, we'll have to do our due diligence and look at some potential options. I'll tell you one guy that I will say absolutely no to is I swear to the good Lord above me that if I hear one more person recommend Cliff Kingsbury for this job, I'm going to lose my absolute you-know-what.
He's in Thailand, man. He's not taking calls right now.
Talk about failing up. I mean, oh, my gosh. So he can.
He is the definition.
In Thailand for all
he's
I
the
know,
definition of failing up. To that conversation we had the other day. I mean, he wasn't a very good head coach on the FBS level, and then he gets a head coach job in the NFL. So
Of course, Sean Davis just texted me, "Go get Kingsbury."
Of course he did.
Sean trying to start stuff with me today. But I mean, look. That's the thing, Ryan, is that's the position that Notre Dame is in right now is if he does, in fact, take this job, then Notre Dame's in a very unique situation because, let's just dive into it, right? Let's talk about it. Should Tommy Rees take this job or not? What are the pros and cons? And I think that's something that we should have a conversation about. And you and I aren't going to necessarily agree on some of this based on the conversation we had at the very beginning. Uh,
Yep.
so pros, obviously. So we'll kind of go pros and cons, and then kind of say what we think he should do, in my opinion. So to me, pros are it's Alabama, right? I mean, that's one. That's a big one.
It's a big
Okay.
pro.
I mean, that's a big
Yeah.
pro. You're talking about a program that's, won a national championship, 3 seasons ago, 2 seasons ago, right? Played for a championship a year ago. Saban has won, see here, 9, 11, 12, 15, 17, and 20. So 6 national titles at Alabama, 7 overall. His first national championship was Tommy Rees' senior year of high school. And since Tommy Rees has been in college as a player or coach, Alabama has won, what would it be, Ryan? 5 national championships, right? Since 11, 12, 15, 17, and 20.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
So 5 national championships. Obviously, Tommy Rees coached against Alabama a couple of years ago in the national championship game. We said a week ago, 2 weeks ago, actually, we said before the bowl game against Gator Bowl that the results weren't great. But if you break down the game plan that Notre Dame had, the play calling from Tommy Rees in that game was actually pretty good. We've said this. It's just that the quarterback couldn't execute it, which, again, I mean, he's the quarterback's coach, but I don't know how much more you could have got out of Ian Book, as we've discussed in the past. So, you're going to talk about a school that's bringing in the number 1 ranked recruiting class in the country. You're talking about a program that can go anywhere and recruit anybody at any time. You've got resources that are better than anybody in college football right now. I mean, those are the pros, right? So, Ryan, any more that you would add to that conversation?
Did you mention the pay raise most likely in that situation?
Oh, it'd be a huge pay raise. But honestly, but to be real with you, I don't think that would really be a determining factor for Tommy Rees. I don't.
It's a big pro, though. It's a big pro.
I mean, it's a pro, but I'm trying to think of things that would be kind of pros for him. And number one, I think he's making pretty good money at Notre Dame. I think he would get a pay raise. Jack Swarbrick would definitely give Tommy Rees a pay raise if Tommy Rees needed that to come back.
Sure.
But I think that Tommy has, I mean, number one, he's not married, right? He doesn't have kids. So he's not in a position right now. He's only 31. He's not in a position right now where I think he feels, oh, gee, I got to go maximize this deal. If he felt the Alabama job was not the best job for him, I don't know if there's a reasonable money offer that Nick Saban would offer. I mean, of course, if he wanted to offer him $10 million, okay, but that's not going to happen, right? So when I say I don't know if there's an amount, there's not a reasonable amount that I think Nick Saban would be willing to offer to get Tommy Rees if Tommy Rees didn't want to come, to the point where it would be enough to make Tommy Rees change his mind.
Sure.
I think if he makes this decision and takes this job, I think it would have a lot to do with, okay, this is a thing that's going to give me a huge career boost, give me a chance to compete for a championship quickly. And then if you look at the success that previous coaches of the people that have held that position beforehand have had, that fits in line with what you're trying to accomplish. Where at Notre Dame, it's a little different.
And he's only 31 years old,
31,
right? Yeah. So I mean, that would be if he hits that track that some of the previous have made, I mean, he's going to be in a really good position in the very near future, right? I mean, he might be a NFL offensive coordinator or a head coach in college football within 3 to 4 years. Like, that's possible because that's what kind of the track tells you that happens, right? Which is interesting. So
I think some of the cons for me are, honestly, and I've said this before, and I know that a lot of people don't agree with me, but I said it before the season, and I think I got proved somewhat correct, that Alabama's talent isn't what it's been in the past outside of one position, and that's quarterback. Now, the offensive line has talent, but I don't think it's like this crazy, insane unit like they've had in past years. It's got a lot of potential, though. But I don't think the receiving core is what people make it out to be. I said this last year, and they didn't play well. And, yeah, okay, part of it's Bill O'Brien, and he's not a very good coach. But I'm telling you, the talent is not what it has been in the past. The running back room is completely dependent on incoming freshmen, in my opinion, because the running back room is not what it has been in the past. And the tight end room it's going to be good, but it's not elite either. And then the biggest one for me is the quarterback room is not impressive. I mean, you got Ty Simpson and then the incoming freshman. What else do you have? The quarterback market right now in the transfer portals, there's nobody out there that's going to move the needle in the portal either. So and why does that matter? Well, because the expectation, Ryan, is going to be that your offense is like what it's been under Lane Kiffin and under Steve Sarkisian and guys like that. There's not going to be this. There's not Alabama's. Well, the talent's not as good as it's been. So yeah, it's okay that you're not lighting up the scoreboard the way the past coaches have. So I think that's a con, is you're not walking into as good of a situation as what I think Steve Sarkisian walked into,
Right.
where he had what? Mac Jones, Tua Tagovailoa, and Jalen Hurts all in the quarterback room. And
It's not
now
bad.
you're talking about Ty Simpson and,
Jalen
the incoming
Milroe
freshman, maybe
yeah.
Jalen Milroe, unless he moves to receiver. Like, what's the quarterback room at Alabama looking like right now? And
Right.
so to me, I don't think the room is what people make it out to be. So unless there's a quarterback out there that I don't know about that could potentially be an option for Alabama, and I don't know who that would be. It'd have to be someone going into the portal after spring ball. I don't think the roster's as good, to be completely honest with you. I really don't. So I think that's another factor that you have to look at, right? And here's the thing. So let's talk about whether or not, if you were in his shoes, you take the job or not. I'll start. This is going to sound like a homer take. I get it. It's fine. You can say whatever you want. But for me, I've been pretty consistent about this. I have been very consistent about this before this whole Tom Rees thing came up. I don't think Alabama's talent is what it has been in the past. Now, the incoming freshman class is a step back in the right direction, right? Like, they just signed a freshman class to me that has a chance to get things back on track, right? And I know they had a lot of big name guys on defense, but look, I like Jalen Hale a lot. The rest of their receiving core is good. It's not great, but they added some size. They signed an okay tight end in Ty Lockwood, but a very good running back room. I talked about Dylan Lonergan. It's a good offensive line class. So I think it's a step in the right direction, but this isn't a vintage Alabama offensive class, in my opinion. There's no five-star receiver. There's no elite receiver that people talk about. I like Jalen Hale a lot, but this isn't like, think about it, Ryan. In a 2-year span, Alabama at one point in time signed, It was Henry Ruggs, Jerry Jeudy.
Yeah.
You had Jalen Waddle, and who was the fourth? Devontae Smith. Devontae Smith.
Too. Okay.
And then John Mechie. They haven't signed that kind of group in the last couple of years. It's been good. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot of teams around the country that would want Alabama's receiving core right now, but it isn't as good as it has been in the past. And so when I look at it, Ryan, again, the talent level isn't what it's been, but the expectations are to me just as high. And so to me, I look at that, and then I look at Notre Dame. You're the one, it's Tommy Rees, that has built this group that we all have these expectations for, right? You're the one that went out and got Sam Hartman and Tyler Buckner and Kenny Minchie, and you got CJ Carr coming in next year. You're the one that went out and got Logan Diggs. I've said this before, it wasn't Lance Taylor. It was Tommy Rees who went out and got Logan Diggs. You guys have got this dynamic running back room coming back. You have upgraded the receiving core exponentially in the last several months. Your tight end room is good, and you're going to have arguably the best offensive line in the country next year, which we talked about yesterday. We expect them to be in the conversation for the best. And so to me, it's one of those things where, do you go be the next guy at Alabama, or do you become the guy that gets your alma mater back to the top? I mean, that's the battle that he finds himself in.
Right.
So for me, obviously I'm a little bit biased, but I think so is Tommy Rees, as a Notre Dame alum and a Notre Dame graduate, is stay here and build this thing up. Because I feel like if he's able to kind of take this next leap as a coach and get this offense to that next level, I mean, he can ride his own ticket. I mean, dude, he's got Nick Saban coming after him a year after he barely scored over 30 points a game, right? Imagine if Notre Dame goes out there, Ryan, and they're as good as we think they're going to be on offense this year.
Right.
Yeah. That's the way I look at it. So, I mean,
I think you made great points about the talent gap maybe not being as much as it once was, and I agree with you on that. I don't disagree
on
with
offense.
You.
Defense is a different story.
Yep. Yeah. I'm talking about the offensive side of the football. I agree with you in all the points that you hit, right? The Alabama wide receiver core is definitely not what it used to be. A couple freshmen coming in. I think
Ryan, can you kick that over again? You kind of froze for a second there when you said the wide receiver core isn't. So just kind of get back to that. You just froze for a second, so we missed a little bit of what you said.
Gotcha. No, I was just saying that the wide receiver room isn't quite what it had been. You make that solid point, right? The running back room has talents, but it's mostly young outside of Jason McClellan. I agree there. Quarterback room has some questions that need to be answered. I think we see the talent conversation of Alabama in the same way. If I'm trying to have the understanding of what Tommy Rees is looking for, because we've talked about this before, right? As far as the track, I think that Tommy Rees does want to be in the NFL eventually, right? Like I do think that is the ultimate thing. Like I don't see him being a lifer at Notre Dame. I don't currently see that, right? So I think he looks at Alabama and he says, yes, there's a lot to figure out, but I've had some success with Ian Book, obviously, right? I've had some success with Drew Pine.
I won 9 games with Drew Pine as my quarterback. Right.
Exactly. So if you look at that and you say, yeah, maybe Ty Simpson isn't Tua Tagovailoa, but like I could probably get the most out of Ty Simpson, right? I could probably get the most out of, one of the freshmen if it comes down to it. Like I just think that from his perspective, this might be the move for Tommy Rees. It might be.
I mean, might be, but I guess my point is if you're looking at it from what you've had, you don't have those. You don't have what Alabama's had in the past. You don't have Mac Jones isn't walking through that door. Tua's not walking through that door. Bryce Young isn't walking through that door. Jerry Jeudy's not walking through that door. That's kind of where I'm coming from. Yes, in the past, there has been a clear talent gap, significant talent gap in most years. I'd say like 2015 was an exception, right? I mean, Notre Dame could compete with Alabama that year in a lot of places at the skill positions, not the depth-wise, but the starters. But you're looking at what's coming back. And the reason that I point to that is because it'd be different, Ryan, if it was Tommy Rees was the OC at LSU and he was considering going to Notre Dame or Alabama. It'd be a little different deal. And for me, it's the talent that they do have coming back is talent he has invested his blood, sweat, and tears into. That's the point, right?
Sure.
And so from a career arc standpoint, I don't disagree with you because the career arc aspect is the big thing. That's the only reason for me that I would consider taking this job if I was in Tom Rees's shoes, is the career arc. Because I could sit here and say, if they do this, and this, then he could write his own ticket, right? But that's all conjecture. That's all me thinking what could happen based on the interest he's gotten so far. Because, again, it's not like Notre Dame has lit the world on fire statistically in the last few years. Yet you and I both know that they've had Miami. We know about Alabama now. And you and I both know that there's been NFL teams that have kind of expressed some interest in Tommy Rees to one degree or another. So my point is that interest has been there. Imagine if he's able to kind of build this offense into being something different and something better than what we've seen. That's what I'm saying. But again, that's conjecture. That's absolute conjecture. You know that 5 of the last 7 OCs have gone on to, and really you could go back even further than that. The only OC that I remember that didn't get a big promotion was what? Doug Nussmeier? Because Jim McElwain got a promotion. Didn't he go from Alabama to Florida, correct?
Yeah.
If I remember correctly. I think Doug Nussmeier is the only guy that didn't really kind of get that promotion. So, you're going back to Saban's the beginning of his tenure. You look, it's funny, because he has had a lot more success with offensive coordinators than he has with defensive coordinators, which I kind of find kind of interesting and kind of funny. But he had Nussmeier as offensive coordinator, quarterbacks coach in 12 and 13. They won the title in 12, 13. They had I guess you could call it for Alabama, a down year for them. And then he moved on to Michigan for a lateral move. So the worst of the guys to get a job, the worst move that was made was a guy went from Bama to Michigan on a lateral move, right? And and then you look at Notre Dame, and I said the track record's not there. So if it's all about the career arc, then yes, I do believe that that's a move to make. If you're talking about competing for a national championship, that's another consideration because no, I don't think the offense is going to be as good at Alabama, but the defense, I think, depending on who he hires, but the defense is going to be, I think, really good next year because I feel like their defense underachieved greatly the last few years. You know this, Ryan. How many times have I said this on this show? Pete Golding is awful as a defensive coordinator. Awful. He wasted so much talent at Alabama. Well, you're going to get a lot of that talent back next year, and you just landed Alabama's offensive class in 2023 is pretty good. It's a tad overrated. What makes Bama the number 1 class in the country on my class rankings is a defensive class that is just nuts.
Yeah. Keon Keeley, Caleb Downs, James Smith.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, and in the secondary, they needed, and that's a position that's not that they needed an upgrade because they have been a little inconsistent recruiting the secondary the last few years. You know, you got Tony Mitchell, you got Caleb Downs, you got Desmond Ricks, you know, you got Jaleel Hurley. I question who the corners are in that class outside of, you know, one guy. It's a very safety. Ricks is a corner. It's a very safety kind of oriented. Jaleel Hurley, I think, can play corner, but they're 2 6'2" trees. I mean, the 2 corners they signed are both like 6'1", 6'2". A great safety class. You know, the linebacker class leaves a lot to be desired, to be honest with you, but they've got a lot of talent coming back a linebacker, so they didn't necessarily have a need for a bunch of linebackers in this class, you know, after what they've been able to sign in recent seasons. But I do think they came up a little bit short there. But, you know, you look at it, Ryan, and from a team standpoint, Bama's ahead of Notre Dame right now. I mean, their down year was what, 11-2? Notre Dame's was 9-4.
Right.
You know, you look at the schedule, they're both going to be tough schedules at that point in time. So if you're just looking at an offense, I will make the case, and I will say this without hesitation and don't really care what the pushback is. This is a move to me that if you're just looking at what I would rather coach, I think that Notre Dame has the better roster coming back in 2023. I do. I think because with all due respect, yeah, I can get the most out of Ty Simpson, but who do you think you have a better chance of getting the most out of in 2023? Ty Simpson or Sam Hartman and Tyler Buckner, right? And we all know that Tommy loves C.J. Carr. I mean, he picked C.J. Carr over Julian Sand. So now you're going to go to Alabama and you're going to coach the guy that you didn't think was as good as the guy that you got at Notre Dame. Because we all know if Notre Dame wanted Julian Sand, he's committed to Notre Dame right now. We all know this.
They could have had him,
easily. Yep. I mean, he did not hide the fact that he wanted to come to Notre Dame. So then you're going to go to Alabama and coach the guy that you didn't think was as good as the guy that you're going to get to coach in Notre Dame, right? And so that's the thing. I look back and I say, hey, listen, this is why I think that, to me, this is the move I would rather make because, again, he invested in building the roster to what it is now. If I was an outsider, I may not feel the same way.
Yeah,
you know, and that's kind of the way I look at it, Ryan.
Can I ask you a question from the Alabama perspective? I kind of do like how Tommy Rees's offense would fit down there. Do you agree with that, or do you disagree with that?
Say that again.
I do kind of like how Tommy Rees's offense would fit with Alabama, with how they would like to operate.
Because yes, they run a pro style system. They're not a college spread team. They have some complexity. Now, Tommy's system is not as complex as Bill O'Brien's, and that's a compliment because Bill O'Brien's system was unnecessarily complex because he's one of those guys that likes to show everyone how smart he is, like more than the one that I've literally ever met.
He is a NFL guy to the worst octave.
Yes, he's the stereotypical bad version. He's the stereotypical like NFL guy that you don't like.
Exactly.
Right. So I think that's a big part of it. And people that think the C.J. Carr is just going to follow Tommy Rees to Notre Dame, just stop, right? Just stop, okay?
To Alabama, you mean?
To Alabama, yes, to Alabama. No. Number one, Alabama already has a quarterback, number one, in that class. And number two, C.J. Carr doesn't want to – from what I understand, he's been pretty adamant he wants to stay in the Midwest. He doesn't want to go too far away from home. So, absolutely, he's not going to follow him to Alabama. So, there's a lot of bad takes going on right now in the chat, Ryan, with some of this stuff. So let's discuss what we know and what we can argue now. So to me, I understand all the points about Alabama, and they make a lot of sense. And like I said, career arc and national championship, you feel like you're going to be pushed ahead by taking the Alabama job. But I just kind of feel like knowing Tommy Rees, I guess this may be more of a hope. I hope that he looks at what he has built at Notre Dame and says, but imagine what I could do for my own career arc if I can turn this into what I think it can be.
Sure.
Because I know a lot of people around Notre Dame think that this offense has a chance to be special next year. That's a fact. I mean, now, I'm not saying it will be, right? The fact isn't that it will be a great offense. The fact is that people at Notre Dame are very excited about what this group can be because there's a lot of excitement about the coaching staff that they've put together. That Tommy Rees had a big hand in, right? And there's a lot of excitement about the talent that's coming up, and especially getting Sam Hartman. So, look, here's the deal. Like that's what he's got to decide. Do you want to be the next guy to do this at Bama, or do you want to be part of the guy that brings that back to Notre Dame? it's not as easy a decision as it might seem in either direction. I mean, there's strong pulls. Ryan, you and I could sit here and make very convincing arguments to go to Alabama, and we can make very convincing arguments to stay at Notre Dame. That's the reality of it.
Yeah.
So
I mean, and I honestly, I don't necessarily think there's a wrong answer for him, right? Because both sides do present something tremendous possibilities. It's just, it is a tough decision. I mean, again, I just look at it and I say 31-year-old guy who has been in the NFL a little bit, but for the most part, Notre Dame's what he knows, right? Like he's a Chicago kid, grew up Notre Dame, graduated from Notre Dame. Sometimes guys also just kind of want to spread their wings a little bit, right?
Mm-hmm.
And try something a little different. Sure. And I understand
I don't think that's Tommy, though. I don't think that's Tommy,
so?
though. No. I mean, because otherwise he would have left already. I mean, he's had opportunities. He could have gone to LSU for a big contract. He could have gone to Miami. He could be a NFL quarterbacks coach right now if he wanted to be. So he could be at Oregon right now. Remember, Oregon pursued Mario Cristobal wanted to hire him his last year at Oregon, big time. So he could be at a lot of different places that are big time programs already if he just wanted to kind of spread his own wings. You know what I mean? I think that would have already happened. I think he would have followed Brian Kelly to LSU or used Brian Kelly leaving to go somewhere else. Right. And that's what I think he would have happened if he didn't really want to be here.
Yeah.
So does that mean he's not going to take this job? No, it doesn't mean that at all. Doesn't mean that at all. He could still take this job because, again, Alabama's a different animal than all those other positions we offered. I don't think if he takes a job, it would be because he wants to spread his wings, per se.
Right.
I think it would be because he views this in his career trajectory as the best move for him in that regard. You got to think, too, his family's in Chicago, right? I mean, that's where his family's from. So it's not an easy decision. It really isn't an easy decision.
But we forgot one con, too, and this is just my opinion, right? So maybe it's not a con for Tommy Rees, but living in Tuscaloosa, Alabama does not sound like a fun time to me personally.
Yeah.
But
so the people that I know that have lived in Tuscaloosa, the facilities in the football program are great. They're elite. Yes. They're special. Outside of that, T-Town's not the coolest place in the world. But he's also, say, well, he's in South Bend, Indiana. It's not cool either. Yeah, but he's an hour and a half from Chicago, which is where he's from.
Yes.
Right? So it's a little bit of a different animal.
No doubt.
So we'll see. I mean, like I said, Ryan, I do think the thing about it is I do expect a decision to be made soon. Like, I mean, that's the way these things work, right? Is this isn't going to drag on. He's going to, he's either going to get an offer or not. He's going to accept it or not. This isn't one of those things where Nick Saban's going to be like, hey, man, take a week, think it through. He's got to find a coach. It's February, and he doesn't have an offensive coordinator yet. He can't wait another week or two to figure it out, wait on another guy. So he's going to have to move quickly.
I also think that from the other side, too, is if Tommy does want to stay in Notre Dame, it's better to squash it quick, right? Because then that's like, players are going to be talking, recruits are going to be talking, fan base is obviously going to be talking. So regardless, you want to figure this out quickly to back you up. Yeah.
Here's the one thing, Ryan, that's interesting is if he takes a job, obviously, where are we at, right? Marcus Freeman has to go hire a new offensive coordinator. I don't know who that would be. Maybe he promotes from within. Maybe he goes outside. I don't know what the answer to that would be. I think the easy answer, well, Jared Parker was the OC at West Virginia, and he's a friend of Freeman's, and you could hire him. And maybe that's the answer. I don't know enough about Jared Parker and what he ran at West Virginia to say that's a good or bad move. So this is just me saying options. And what, Ryan? What were you going to say?
And I was just going to say, if you did promote from within, then you could, everyone always is clamoring for getting a quarterback coach in here. Quarterback. Then you could figure that out too if you want.
Exactly. You can go hire a quarterbacks coach to coach the quarterbacks, which would make some people happy. Yes. The other option is to go outside the program. We'd have to look and see who those guys are. And, the reality is does Notre Dame willing to pay the money to go get a big name guy from somewhere else? That's a big question mark.
Yeah.
That big question mark. And so then, you look at the next step is to look at and say, okay, well, what if he says no? Well, that's a big feather in your cap on the recruiting trail over the next year. It's like, look, here's why did you turn Alabama down? Because I think we have a better situation here. And it's one thing for a coach to say that when he's at a school hey, this is what I think. We're trying to, because every coach is like, hey, we're trying to win a championship, right? Like, what
Sure.
coach uses this on the recruiting track? Hey, we're just trying to have fun. We suck. We're going to suck your whole 4 years. We're just out here having a good time. No, hey, we're trying to build for a championship, whether you believe it or not. But he can say, no, I had a chance. I got offered X amount of dollars. I chose less money to stay at Notre Dame because I think we're building this special thing here.
And I mean, because I think people are going to say it's a negative regardless, but I would back up your opinion, Brian, because the only time it's really a big negative, in my opinion, is if a coach wants a job and he gets turned down for it. Like I think about Jim Harbaugh, right? When he was flirting with the Colts last year, it was like he ended up not being picked for the position, right? He didn't turn it down. If Tommy does turn it down, it's like, whoa, that's it. Like he wants to be here.
Right.
He really
It's
wants
a
to
needle
be
mover,
here.
yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. But it has to happen quickly. And so that's the interesting part is he'd have to reach out to people now and say, hey, look, I'm staying. Let's make this known. And you can sell the heck out of that to top recruits. Like, yeah, I had a chance to take more money and go to Alabama and get closer to a title perception wise and go to a place that sets me up because of what the other coordinators have done. But I chose to stay here because I think we're doing something special.
Yeah.
And the spiteful part of me wants to stay and do well so I can tell all the people that have been ripping me for the last several years to just,
Shove
what?
it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So to me, I think that's an opportunity there. But again, it's easy to say that sitting here in this chair when I don't have Nick Saban trying to convince me to come coach for him. So,
Okay.
and we've been here before. I mean, Chip Long interviewed with Nick Saban a couple times, and so it's not like it's not the first time that Nick Saban's tried to poach a coach from Notre Dame. But I think this one is a little bit more sincere and serious in regard to. I don't know that Chip Long was interviewing for the OC job necessarily at both places. Full OC. There was like co-OC 1 year, tight ends, and I think another year. This is a one that's like saying, "Hey, this is the job. You're the OC. You're the quarterback's coach."
Sure.
So that's kind of where we're at, Ryan. So,
yep.
I did want to kind of get to some of these super chats we have that are about this particular topic, Ryan. So let's get to some of these before we decide to move on here a little bit. Let's get here. Okay. So it's down here from Charlie Weiss's last belt loop. He goes, all jokes aside, would you see Freeman try to holler at my guy Charlie Weiss Jr.? Offensive recruiting would be off the chain. Also, I can't blame Tommy. Way more talent and NIL tools he can use. Actually, I think he means Charlie Weiss. The senior, because this is Charlie Weiss's last belt loop. Charlie, my man, Tommy, the game has passed Charlie Weiss by. He hasn't coached in a while.
I did see someone in the chat say Charlie Weiss Jr., so I was curious.
Well, that's kind of why I assumed that he was talking about him.
Yes.
Because of that. But Charlie Weiss is 66 years old.
Yeah,
he wasn't in the greatest of health when he was at Notre Dame. He hasn't coached since 2014. You're talking about almost a decade out of the game. That would not be a good idea. Now, could he consider looking at Charlie Weiss Jr.? I guess,
right.
But I personally wouldn't do that. I mean, he's the co-OC at Alabama at Ole Miss, but again, Lane Kiffin's the offensive coordinator there,
right?
And the way that Charlie Jr. was treated by Notre Dame fans, why the heck would you want to come back to Notre Dame?
Right.
As a child, Notre Dame fans would get on him. So screw that. You know what I mean? Like hard pass on that one. And for me, hard pass on Charlie Weiss Jr. just because I don't think he's ready for this kind of job at this point in time. To be
I have heard that he's a really sharp young coach, but I don't know enough about his.
There's a lot of difference between being a really smart X's and O's guy and being a good coach.
No doubt.
And that's the difference for me. And then Charlie Weiss's last belt loop also said, woke up from a nap to this news. Last time I took a nap and woke up, we lost Keon. Something about napping and waking up to bed. Well, stop napping, dude.
Yeah, I was going to say, Charlie,
seriously. Yeah, for real, man. Just chill, stay awake, and just go to bed early, man. You're killing the program right now. But I'm just kidding.
Seriously.
Obviously, since some people.
I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding at all, Charlie. Sure.
Ryan's kidding.
I am kidding, yes.
Patrick Toll says, I don't know if you remember, but months ago I asked if Notre Dame would consider bringing David Shaw in. I mean, David Shaw has made it very clear he doesn't really like recruiting. So,
Yes.
I mean, is David Shaw an offensive genius? Yeah, he is. Can David Shaw coach quarterbacks as well as anybody in college football? Yeah, he can. But I'd have to know that he can recruit. But
Exactly.
would I give David Shaw a call? Yeah. Yeah, I would. I think you'd be foolish not to, Ryan. I mean, that's my thoughts is, I mean, again, I've always said we're not going to address coaches going elsewhere until coaches. But look, I mean, Tom Rees is in Tuscaloosa. We can entertain the questions now if people provide super chats for them. It'd be silly to say, no, we're not going to talk about it. What I'm saying
Right.
is we're not going to formally talk about it because we need to do our homework first instead of just randomly throwing out names. We're going to do our homework and look at some guys that we think would be, viable options and guys could help move the needle as a program. It's not that we don't want to discuss it. It's just this all kind of happened less than an hour before the show started. And I just want to start throwing out random names of guys that, that hey, what about this guy? What about that guy? We'll do our homework and we'll discuss it because, like I said, it'll all happen pretty quickly. But if you have a question about a specific coach, we'll entertain it right now in this show. Would I call David Shaw if I was Marcus Freeman? Heck to the yes. But I would just need to know. I need to know that you're gonna what your role is going to be in recruiting. I need you to be involved in recruiting. I don't think he has to grind the way that Tommy Rees does, to be honest with you, because he has a little bit more of a track record than Coach Rees does. And I think the other thing too would be he does have a staff that Tommy only had a really good recruiting staff for a year. And so he kind of had to be that grinder. I think David Shaw would have a much better staff around him, Ryan.
That's a key point, and something I was actually going to say is that, I mean, you have Dylan McCullough, you have Harry Heastand, you have Chancey Stuckey, you have Jared Parker. Like, you have some grinders on that side of the football, right? So it's not the end-all, be-all, but, I mean, at the end of the day, David Shaw has been a good recruiter when he, wants to be, but it's just got kind of to the point where, like, he's just kind of done. I mean, David Shaw might honestly just be better off going to get an OC job in the NFL if he can. Like, that might be a better option for him at this point because he is a smart guy. He has gotten a lot out of some talent over the last few years too. I mean, honestly, and when he's had talent, they've been very good, obviously, right? So I like him as a coach. It's just I don't know if he wants the college grind anymore. And I mean, he knows the difficulties of recruiting at a high academic institution, right? All that type of stuff too. So I think he would fit in. It's just, I don't know about the recruiting side of things. I really don't.
Exactly. I mean, that's the big question mark, So, we'll see. We'll have to see how that one plays out. Let's get to some more here, Ryan. We got Kevin Tracy with a super chat. Thank you, Kevin. If Tommy does leave, not that he will, but if he does, Marcus Freeman should consider Brian Van Gorder as OC. He might be a better OC than DC. Well, he can't be worse as a DC. I mean, he can't be worse.
I wonder whose playbook he would steal.
True, very true. We have a super chat here from Blood of Zeus. If Tommy's smart, he stays. The offense drops 40 points a game this year, and he takes the job of his choice next year. Working for Saban is brutal. Well, look, no coach goes into that not knowing how Nick Saban is as a coach.
Sure,
but it's worth it because, again, Ole Miss. Now, keep in mind, Lane Kiffin didn't leave Alabama for the Ole Miss job. He left for Florida Atlantic and then left for Ole Miss. So I want to be clear about that. But you got your last two OCs have done what? I mean, three of your last four OCs have been – well, no, because it was – so hold on a second. So it was Kiffin, then Dable. How does he say that? Is it Dable or Dable? It was Kiffin, then Dable, then Sarkisian, then Loxley, then O'Brien, correct? Or was it Loxley, then Sarkisian? It was Loxley, then Sarkisian, right? So it's New York Giants head coach, University of Maryland head coach, University of Texas head coach, and New England Patriots offensive coordinator are the last four guys, right? Yep. Now, again, Dable did not go from the Alabama to the Giants. He went to what, the Bills?
The Bills OC. Yep.
And then the Giants. So just to make sure, but the point is it got them on that track to be that guy. And so I think that's something to consider as well. But yeah, I mean, look, working for Saban is brutal from everything I've ever heard, but a lot of coaches view it as worth it because of where it's going to be.
Yep.
So I think that's where they're at.
Sure.
With your chest says, why the assumption that Alabama is automatically closer to the promised land again than Notre Dame is now? They've fallen back to the pack a bit in recent years. I mean, a back to the pack is what? 11-2 with your losses by combined 4 points on the road to two teams that spent most of the year in the top 10, and you won the Cotton Bowl or was it the Sugar Bowl over a top 15 team by like 30 something.
Dominated them. Yeah.
And so I don't necessarily disagree with the premise with you, Chess, but as far as Alabama's falling back to the pack, but Notre Dame's went 9-4 and lost to Marshall and Stanford. Now, I think that they're going to be a much better team in 2023. I think Notre Dame has a chance to make a run at a championship in 2023, but Alabama's without question a team that will make a run at a championship again this year. Yep. They're not as dominant as they were. They're still one of the 3 or 4 best programs on a consistent basis. Yeah, I mean, that's not disputable. Notre Dame is not there yet. So I don't think we should assume that they're automatically closer. I think this Notre Dame team in 2023 has a chance to make a run, and we've been saying that. But Notre Dame's got to go show something they haven't shown before. Alabama just has to make a couple little small minor tweaks. And keep in mind, what I have said is that Alabama was also kind of with their hand tied behind a little bit, their back a little bit this year, because I thought they had 2 not very good coordinators. I mean, so that's something to consider too. Now, I don't know who Saban's defensive coordinator is going to be. I've heard rumors he's trying to get the Schumann guy from Georgia and some other guys like that, but I don't know who that's going to be. I just know that the guy can't possibly be worse than Golding. It is kind of funny that outside of Kirby, though, Nick Saban does not have a very good track record of hiring defensive coordinators, in my opinion.
He doesn't.
And he's his offensive coordinator track record has actually been better, in my opinion. The guy hired Tosh Lepo, or however you pronounce his last name, at one point in time. Like, who thought that guy was a coordinator? That guy's a recruiter only.
I guess maybe it's that, that Nick Saban being a defensive guy is going to have more hands-on on defense, and offense maybe he doesn't have as much. I don't know. Yeah. It is kind of weird how that's trending.
And somebody said I don't think Jeremy Pruitt was that good. I think those teams were loaded. I never thought Jeremy Pruitt was a great defensive coordinator. This is just my 2 cents. I mean, he wasn't bad, but I don't think he was great by any stretch of the imagination. So
he was good.
Yeah, he wasn't great, and he was Got some more here. We got from Robert McReynolds. Is there something to be concerned about in that Rees was only an option for Saban after the Washington OC turned him down? What's to be concerned about?
Well, I think they're saying that he wasn't the first option.
I get that. I understand.
Right. I think that's what they're saying.
But I don't think what's to be concerned about, though. What's the concern? That's what I don't understand. Like, why is that?
I guess maybe he's saying that maybe that goes into the back of Tommy Rees's mind for the decision-making process that like I wasn't for Tommy Rees, that I wasn't the first.
We don't know that Grubb or Levy have turned Alabama down, do we? It's just that they didn't. That he just said he's staying at Washington. I don't know that there's been a report that he was actually offered the job. I'm not saying he hasn't. I'm saying I don't think it's been reported that he's been offered. He was officially offered the job. I know Levy wasn't offered the job.
Yeah, I know. Sure I don't think Levy even ever really seriously pursued it. I think there was some interest from Grubb, but I could be wrong about that. But yeah,
no, they had interest. I'm not saying they didn't have interest. I'm saying I don't know one way or the other. I haven't seen it reported. Ryan, you can maybe look it up while we're kind of go through questions. I don't know for a fact, and I'm only simply saying this from the standpoint, I'm not arguing whether or not he was or was not. I don't want to report something that I don't know to be true. So I don't know if he was officially offered the job or not, or if he just said, hey, they talked and the offer never came and he said he's going to stay at Washington. I don't know the answer to that. He may very well have. I just want to make sure that if we're going to report something, that we're reporting something accurate. But honestly, I don't, if I'm the second choice, because I don't, at worst, Tommy's the third choice at worst. Somebody said fourth choice. He wasn't the fourth choice. I don't think Levy was offered the job. I don't think Levy was pursued. I think there was just because here's what happens. A coach reaches out to you, hey, we'd like to talk to you about this job. And then if you're someone who likes to talk to the media, you tell the media, hey, this is what's going on. And then you use that to try to get a promotion at your current school. That doesn't mean that you were offered the job or even pursued for the job other than just an initial conversation. Right, because every coach is going to have, when you're looking to hire coordinators, you're going to have an initial list of guys that you reach out to, right? And so let's just say the interest that we've seen Nick Saban express and Tommy Rees seems to be, from an outside standpoint, a lot stronger than the interest he expressed in Jeff Levy. It's very similar to the interest he expressed in Grubb. So those are two different things. So I would say maybe second, at worst, third choice. But again, you have to look at it from your standpoint of, am I confident enough to not care?
Right.
Now here's something that Tom Rees is going to have to consider. The perception is going to be that you weren't the top choice. And if you don't come out right away and light it up on offense, then there's going to be a lot of criticism thrown at you. That's something he has to consider. And now that could be where, with Robert's question, that would be an angle that I would entertain, Ryan, is the expectations at Alabama is already through the roof, right? But if you're perceived to have not been the choice, and let's be real, Alabama fans don't respect Notre Dame. They're not going to look at hiring a Notre Dame coach, and all they're going to do is look at stats. There's not going to be a lot of excitement on the Alabama side for this, which again means he's going to have to light the world on fire coming out of that. Now, you've got Middle Tennessee in the opener, then you've got Texas at home, at USF, home against Ole Miss. So you're going to be challenged early, and you're going to have some chances to prove yourself early. But if he doesn't come out and the offense is rolling, like, people are not going to accept if they don't want you for the job. They're not going to buy the whole, well, we have a first-time quarterback, we're replacing a Heisman Trophy winner, blah, 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 blah. They're not going to buy that, Ryan. They're not. They're going to say, well, screw it. You're not getting the job done at a place like Bama. I mean, keep in mind, this is the place that when Nick Saban didn't win a title in 13 and 14, Alabama fans, I've seen these posts. Maybe he's the game's passed him by. It happened again after 17, because remember he went that long stretch of 18 and 19 and not winning a title, before 20, and he had the audacity to not make the playoff in 19. The game had clearly passed him by. Yes. That's kind of, so that's the level of expectation you're walking into. There's no, hey, we got to break in a new quarterback. Well, the last freshman quarterback we broke, redshirt freshman quarterback broke in, led us to the title game and won a Heisman. That's the standard that they have. It's insane. Yes. And so do you really want to be the guy that wasn't even the first choice in that situation? That's a fair question, Ryan. So if that's where you're kind of coming from, yeah, I get that one. I get that one for sure. No doubt about that.
Pressure-packed situation. There's no doubt
Big
about
time.
it.
Big
no
time.
Doubt.
We got a super chat from Jay Clampin Investments. This is, hey, fellas, how could he be the guy to take Notre Dame to new heights offensively, or just be the next guy in Alabama? Gut feeling, what does he do? Jay Clampin, I think, by the way, I love this guy's handle. Like, he's talking about, right? The Beverly Hillbillies.
Yes.
I think that's a fair way to look at it, right? And I've made this argument with, like, Keon Keeley. Do you want to go to Bama and be the next so-and-so, like in line at so-and-so, or do you want to come to Notre Dame and be something special? Well, Keon decided to be the next so-and-so, right? Will Tommy Rees make a similar decision? I don't know the answer to that. But we'll find out soon enough. What's my gut? Honestly, I don't even really know, because I don't know if I can differentiate what I think is going to happen from what I want to happen.
Right.
You know what I mean? So, like, my gut would be more honestly what I want to happen. And what I want to happen is I know this is not a popular opinion with some, but I want Tom Rees to come back, because I want, more than anything, it's not a confidence of knowing he's going to have an elite offense in 2023. I just want to know, because we can make excuses for the last three offenses, right? You had the COVID year, you had a ton of receiver injuries in 2020. 2021, you had bad O-line coaching of an O-line coach that I don't think he wanted, nor did Chip Long want. Only Brian Kelly wanted. You had a crap receivers coach. You had all these issues in 2021, and then you finished the year pretty good. 2022 comes out. The quarterback you've been grooming goes down in week 2. You've got your top receiver goes down in fall camp. You've got another receiver that goes down. Your best returning offensive lineman's banged up all year. And there's a lot of excuses that we can make. Some of them are valid, some of them are not, right? I'm just kind of throwing out the potential excuses people could use, and say, but also the talent has really risen the last few years, in my opinion, thanks to partly transfers, because you got Sam Hartman coming in, the return of some big time coaches that are now maximizing that talent, the arrival of some coaches that are top notch in the profession, like a Dylan McCullough. And you say, I just want to know if he can or can't. Like, all the time Notre Dame is invested in Tom Rees, I don't want the fruits of that labor to be manifested in Tuscaloosa if he is that good, right? I want it to be in South Bend. And I want to see, because we're going to know one way or the other if Tommy Rees is legit big time in 2023. Because there's no excuses that you can possibly use in 2023, Ryan. None.
No. I mean, you have one of the best offensive lines coming back if you stay at Notre Dame. You have a proven commodity quarterback. You have an improved wide receiver group. You have a loaded running back staple. And you have good coaches around you offensively too, right? So there's no excuses. And then if you go to Alabama, if you want an excuse, that's not the place that you want to go to,
Right.
man. That's not the place. So I agree 100%. There's no excuses in 2023, no matter what he decides.
Yeah, I mean, look, and I'm not saying I buy all the excuses. I'm just saying there are excuses that you could make. There aren't any now. There are no excuses now. And I just want to see what he can do with that. And I'm hoping, so again, this is where I say it's not my gut, it's more of a wish. My hope is that ultimately is what Tom Rees decides. I want to see what I can do with the unit I built, not the unit somebody else built. I want to see what I can do with the unit I built.
Sure.
Right? As the OC. Recruiting the players we have, recruiting the coaches that they have, right? Because obviously Marcus Freeman's responsible for making the hires, but he allowed Tommy Rees to have a lot of say in who was on the staff. You've got a staff that you're excited about. You've got a roster that you've built. You've got a quarterback that you handpicked in the open transfer market, right? You've got young talent coming in. Let's see what you can do, right? And kind of see this is what I built, and I want to see what I can do with what I built, not what somebody else built.
Yep.
So but see again, Jay Clampett, that's not my gut. That's more of what I want to happen.
I wish I could answer the question. I don't really have a gut feeling one way or the other right now. I really don't. I mean, it honestly, and this is full transparency. If you told me that Tommy Rees left for the Alabama job, I would be like, okay, I get it. But if you told me that he stayed, I would also kind of have the same reaction. I literally do not have a gut feeling on this one right now. I think this one it could legitimately go both ways. I really do at this point.
Let's get to some more super chats here. We have one from Tony Stengel. He says, if Rees leaves, thank you for the super chat, Rees. If Rees leaves, what does this mean for CJ Carr? I don't think it means anything for CJ Carr right now.
No.
I think CJ Carr would sit back and see who they replace him with and let it play out, because CJ's invested in Notre Dame beyond just Tommy Rees. Now, Tommy Rees played a big role in getting him here, but as is always the case, once a kid gets here, he falls in love with other aspects about it. He's gotten to know Marcus Freeman a lot more. So, yes, Tommy Rees deserves all the credit for landing CJ Carr, but it's not a situation where CJ Carr's only coming to Notre Dame because of Tommy Rees. Tommy Rees sold a lot more than just him in that recruitment. It's about Notre Dame. It's about all the opportunities and all that kind of stuff.
And it's not that this is the end-all, be-all, but also CJ Carr's been in a class for a while, right? So he's developed relationships with guys like Cam Williams and Peter Jones and Jack Larson and those types of guys too, right? So does it mean that it doesn't have an effect? I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying an immediate effect, to your point, right, Brian? It's let's calm down here for a second. Let's be a little level-headed. Let's see who the next OC is. Let's see what my relationship is with them before you jump to just a decision, right? Jump out of nowhere. So,
right. So I want to get back to that last one too, Ryan. It's just because I want to make it clear. I'm not saying Tom Rees is leaving for Alabama. I'm not saying Tom Rees is staying. I genuinely don't know what he's going to do. Right. So that's why I want to avoid the guts. I want to avoid the predictions, because this all just hit us 45 minutes before the show started. So a day ago, I'm hearing everything's all good. It's, he's going to, everything's fine. Let's keep moving forward. And then all of a sudden this hits. So I don't think I've had enough time to really get a gut. Because as soon as it happens, Ryan, I had just gotten out of showers, getting dressed for the show. And so what do I got to do? I got to hit the phone. I got to get intel. I got to talk to people. So I haven't really had a chance to kind of figure out what my gut is. I don't know. I don't know what he's going to do. I'm just telling you, here's where we are. And here's the cases of staying or going. And here's how I would look at it if I were him. So
no doubt.
We can go ahead.
I was just going to say we can only speculate on stuff we know, right? We're not in the mind of Tommy Rees. We can only report what we know.
Right. All right, let's get to this next one. Blake Kajar says, "What about Joe Brady?" Thank you for the super chat, Blake. This is an interesting one, Ryan. This is a very interesting one. What do you? Well, I'm going to kick this to you first and hear what you have to say about it.
I think Joe Brady is a really smart offensive coordinator. I think that when you saw what he did at LSU as the passing game coordinator, whatever his title was, and the immediate return he got from there. And I will also say this, Brian, from the Carolina Panthers stuff, I think that Joe Brady was a little bit of a scapegoat under Matt Rule, to be honest. I don't think that one was completely deserved, if I'm being completely transparent. I mean, I would give him a call 100%. I think he's a really smart guy who doesn't have a job right now. He's shown that he can do some
Did
stuff.
he get fired by the Bills?
Is he with the Bills? Is that
he was their quarterback's coach this year? Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay. I didn't even
so
know
when
that.
Ken Dorsey went to OC, they hired him to be the quarterback's coach. So
Gotcha.
yeah, he was with the Bills this year. So yeah. But
Gotcha.
so we know he at least can live in the cold a little bit, right? I mean, if he's in Buffalo, he's a Miami guy, but yeah. So Ryan, I mean, that's an interesting one because there's a lot of upside to that. We saw what he did at LSU, and you say, well, he won't have Joe Brady. Yeah, but those numbers they had were insane. Yes. I mean, in the schemes they ran were, yes, they had great talent, but you've got to be able to look at it and say, okay, so like here's an example. Ryan, you know I've had this opinion for a long time. Clemson's offense put up points when it did back in the day because they had great players. I've never been very high on the scheme that Clemson runs. It's a pretty generic scheme. It's not overly complex. It's just my dudes are better than your dudes, and we play in the ACC. And I've had 2 generational quarterbacks in a 4-year span, right? When you look at LSU, you say, yeah, they had elite talent. I mean, they had one of the greatest single seasons a quarterback has ever had, if not the greatest, right? I mean, I'd argue it was the greatest. I mean, they just saw insane stuff that year. You had just an outstanding receiving core. It's kind of funny when like Pro Football Focus put that thing out and it had like Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson. And it's like, is this the greatest receiving core ever? And I'm like, bro, this might not even be the greatest receiving core in the last 5 years. I mean, because LSU's 2019 and Alabama's 17, 18, and 19 receiving cores all might have a word to have about this one, right?
Yeah.
Let's not even talk about the Miami receiving core that had Reggie Wayne, Santana Moss, and Andre Johnson. Okay, so let's pump the brakes on the hyperbole about Ohio State's receiving core.
I mean, you could legitimately argue right now that Justin Jefferson is the best receiver in the NFL and Jamar Chase is top 3 right now. Right. Like you can make that argument.
Well, and in college, you had those two, plus you had Terrace Marshall,
who's a good player,
right? Who was a very good player in college as well. So, yeah, but they didn't. This is the point I've made in arguments before. But they had all those players the year before, Ryan. And they scored 32 points a game. And Joe Burrow had 2,894 passing yards, 16 touchdowns, and 5 picks. So Joe Burrow, in his first year as a starter at LSU, I believe he was a senior at the time, correct? Yes. Because he was a fifth-year senior in 2019. But Joe Burrow, in his first year as a starter at LSU, had a lower completion percentage than Drew Pine by 7 points, had less yards per attempt than Drew Pine, and despite Drew Pine throwing 125 fewer passes, Drew Pine had 6 more touchdowns than Joe Brady, and Drew Pine had 155.27 quarterback rating this year, and Joe Burrow in his first year as a starter at LSU had 133.21 passer rating.
Right.
Okay. And Joe Burrow averaged 222.6 yards per game. Drew Pine was like 183.7. But you also have to count the end of the fact that he had 20 yards passing in a game that he didn't start. So if you take that out and you say you look at the numbers, then he started 1, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. He was at 200.1 passing yards per game. Not that much different. So Drew Pine put comparable numbers up to Joe Burrow in Joe Burrow's first year as a starter. And who was Joe Burrow's receiving core in 2019, Ryan?
Same guys. Yeah.
Same dudes.
Yeah.
Same dudes. It was just Justin Jefferson, Stephen Chase, Jamar Chase, or Stephen Sullivan, Jamar Chase. You had Foster Moreau at tight end. You had Terrace Marshall. Yep. Yeah. Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I mean, again, same dudes.
And can I also say this, Brian? Because people talk about Chase and Jefferson a lot and Marshall, which, that's incredible, right? Like, I'm not going to sit here and say, like, oh, there's no talent to work with. He also got, though, in that 1 year, a lot out of Moss's son, right? The tight end, Thad Moss, who was I mean,
47 catches for 570 yards.
He didn't even get drafted in the NFL. Like, he couldn't even stick, right? Clyde Edwards-Helaire, like, I know we're talking about passing game coordinator, but, like, offensively, they got a lot out of Clyde Edwards-Helaire that year, who has been relegated to a backup after being a first-round pick. So it's not like you got a lot out of some other players that maybe weren't the most talented in the world, too. And the offensive line wasn't great that year either. I mean, it wasn't a great.
It was okay.
It was okay.
But exactly, and that's the argument. That's a discussion you and I had yesterday when we were talking about teams that have won recently that didn't have great offensive lines.
I mean, the best offensive lineman on that team was probably Lloyd Cushenberry, right? And he was like, a backup-ish player in the NFL.
Left tackle they had a lot of talent. He just couldn't put it together.
Sadiq Charles. Yeah.
He
was a really nice athlete. But,
Austin Deculus was an okay. He was okay.
Good college offensive tackle.
It was a lot like the Clemson line, Ryan. They played well together. They were a better unit than they were as individual players. Well, Notre Dame has a chance to be both, right? A very good unit with elite talent. So, I can't say that I know enough about Joe Brady. Like, I'm always hesitant when a guy's had like that one great year. Sure. I can't speak to what he did with the Panthers, Ryan, because I don't watch the NFL. You'd have a lot better say in that than I do. But I think the thing too with Joe Brady is I would hope that maybe with a little humility from not having success, he's going to walk. If he were to, let's just say hypothetically, he did take the job. He's walking to a situation where he'd have a really good supporting cast around him. And I think that's something that people don't talk enough about. That LSU offensive coaches that has some really good veteran coaches, and I think they kind of played off each other well. And he would have that at Notre Dame as well. So he wouldn't have to do it all by himself, in my opinion. So, yeah, we'll see. We'll see kind of how it plays out. But I mean, I think he'd be foolish not to at least talk to him. Here's my really only big concern is one of the reasons Joe Brady left LSU is he made it very clear he didn't like to recruit. And that would have to change.
Considering he was such a young guy, right? It's a little weird.
Well, I think it's because he always viewed himself as an NFL guy. I think that's really what it boils down to, is he viewed himself as an NFL guy.
I've seen so many people in the chat start talking about Matt Canada. Can we please, man? I hope that's just a joke, honestly, because Matt Canada is awful.
Yeah, we're not even gonna. Yeah,
talking about failing up. He was an awful offensive coordinator for the LSU, and now he's the offensive coordinator for Pittsburgh Steelers somehow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Wasn't he the guy that Joe Brady replaced?
Yes. He was awful, man. The year before, they were running so much motion just to be cute, and it was just like, man.
The guy that couldn't get anything out of Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, and Clyde Edwards-Helaire, is gonna. Please give me a break. You want to know why? Every show we ever talk about the NFL, I'm always given a new reason why I don't watch NFL.
That kind of is awful, man. He's so bad. He's
awful. Potatoes O'Brien. Oh, didn't he also get replaced at Pitt by Mark Whipple?
I'm not sure about that one.
Yeah,
may have been.
Yeah, I'm going to look that up because I thought that I'm correct on that, but I could be misguided on that. But yeah, he's not a guy. No, he was with the Steelers. No, he was with Pittsburgh in 2016. So yes, and then 2017, that's when they hired Whipple, correct? Mark Whipple. No, they hired Sean Watson in 2017.
I don't know who Sean Watson
in 2000, is. Yeah, he's an older guy. He was a West Coast guy back in the day. He was at Colorado in the past. But then they hired Whipple in 2019. So, yes, Canada was there in 2016 for a team that went 8-5 that year, lost to Northwestern in a bowl game, got blown out by Miami, lost to North Carolina, Oklahoma State. So they put up some decent numbers that year. North Carolina did. Pitt did, but he's still awful.
Yes.
All right, let's get to some more questions here. I like the Joe Brady one. It's entertaining, and now's the time to entertain it, right? I mean, but would Joe Brady have any interest in coming back to college? I have no idea.
No idea.
I mean, he hasn't in the past. He hasn't really expressed much of a desire to be a college coach. So I don't know.
And I'm not a fan of having two coordinators that don't enjoy recruiting. So would not enjoy that.
Yes. Potatoes O'Brien says Kellen Moore I think would be a nice fit. A couple things on that. Number one is he just got hired by the Los Angeles Chargers. Number one. Yeah. Number two, I can't really speak to what he's done in the pros, Ryan. That would be more up your alley. But I am pretty sure that Kellen Moore has no college background as a coach. So He has been an NFL coach since he stopped playing, and I'm not a big fan of that. I know it's worked before, but I'm just not a huge fan of those guys that have only ever been in the NFL. Now, again, Joe Brady was an NFL guy, right? I mean, I believe he was with the Saints. I don't know that he coached in college very much. So he was at Penn State as a GA in 15 and 16. So
Nice.
But then he was with the assistant with the Saints for 2 years before he came to LSU for that one season. So I'm always skeptical. I'm not saying I would turn down an NFL guy just because. I just would be very nervous about that, to be honest with you.
And Kellen Moore is not leaving the Los Angeles Chargers as OC to come be the offensive coordinator. No,
then he just get hired like the day after he left it. He got fired by the Cowboys, right?
Yes,
he got that job.
Yeah.
So yeah, I know.
I actually kind of do like Kellen Moore a little bit. I think he got a bad rap because Mike McCarthy's pretty bad as a coach, but that's another conversation.
Yeah, like I said, I don't have an opinion. I just loved him as a quarterback. That's all I can tell you.
He was great. You want to talk about a guy getting the most out of his ability? That is Kellen Moore.
No doubt. All right. Zach Martin says, will Tommy ever get to go to Ireland? That's very well played. Because obviously he got suspended for the game in 2012. The 2020 COVID year. That's really funny. Very well played, Zach.
Maybe
that's what's going on. He doesn't want to go to Ireland.
Maybe he does it. Or if he wants to, he get that pay raise and then go himself if he wanted to. I guess.
There you go. Yeah. There you go. I can afford to take myself and my girlfriend to Ireland with the pay raise I'm getting in Alabama. Yeah, very well done, Zach. Very well done.
Funny.
That is very well done. Thank you for the super chat.
I forgot about the 2012 thing. That's really funny. That's really funny.
Charlie Weiss's last belt loop says one last thing. Honestly, if Tommy leaves, this might put a fire in Freeman and put him on another level that we haven't experienced so far. Watch out. I just would be curious, Charlie, kind of what you mean by that, and kind of what do you mean? Put a fire in him to do what? And again, I'm not arguing with you at all. I'm just curious. I'd love to see you. You don't have, your follow up, Charlie, doesn't have to be a super chat. I just be curious to hear kind of what you mean by that, about that. So here's a question that's for the mailbag from Not Ryan's Bully, Tommy Guns. And so let's explain what that means. Ryan had joked in a show recently that he had a guy that bullied him as a kid was named Tommy, right? And so of course joke. Tommy says,
I was the bully.
Yes.
I was the bully. Just kidding.
That's not nice.
I know.
So Tommy, of course, makes the joke that he's not Ryan's bully. So I just want to make sure people understand that. He says, if you're Coach Freeman, do you wait for Rees to make a decision before you at least start reaching out to people, or are feelers going out now already? I think you have to start putting feelers out now.
Just in case, yeah.
I think you have to.
I mean, because you have to. It's like the saying, right? Like, hope for the best, prepare for the worst, right? Like, you have to prepare for the worst, or else you're going to be behind the 8 ball. Like, because you're you're a little deeper in the process. There's been some coordinator hires across college football, so like you need to start figuring out maybe just a tentative list, if nothing else, right? Of like, these are my targets if this does happen, just in case.
Because you have to move fast.
Yes.
If you're Marcus Freeman, but you also have to make the right hire.
Absolutely.
And so to me, I think that you have to be willing to say, hey, look, whatever we're going to do, we got to do it quickly because we've got to salvage this. Because see, the thing is right now, it's a dead period in recruiting.
Yes.
So you don't necessarily going to miss a lot. You're not going to have those awkward weekends of recruiting where guys are on campus wanting to know who the heck your offensive coordinator is, right? I can assure you this one is not an option. Brian Driscoll for OC, not happening. If you think Charlie Weiss hasn't coached in a long time,
right.
I got him beat. Okay,
that's funny.
But I appreciate it, Sean. Love the support. You're my guy. Appreciate you. But back to the thing about Freeman though, he's got to move quickly.
Yes.
Whatever they're going to do, it's got to go real fast. It's got to go real fast. Just so y'all know, we're not going to dive into the defensive line stuff today. We're going to do that next week because we're now over an hour into the show and. I mean, I don't think anybody wants to talk about the D-line right now.
So this is a fun conversation also. I am having a good time here. But
so we're going to keep answering these questions and then kind of dive and just kind of go to the mailbag.
People in the chat are great. Someone just said we meant Jeff Driscoll. Oh, got it.
Well, then spell it correctly, okay? Because Jeff Driscoll had one L after his name.
That's true.
So there you go, Jason. So Sean Rogers is my dude. Jason Smith is kind of dead to me right now a little bit. So I'm just gonna say it right now. You're a little dead to me, buddy. But yeah. So let's get back here to some questions from Wicked Bronco Production with Super Chat. Thank you, sir. If I'm Rees, why would I leave for Bama and I just turned down LSU, especially if you're a Notre Dame alum? If he leaves, go get the Western Kentucky OC or the Kansas OC.
Well, I mean, I would say that Alabama is definitely a more attractive job than LSU, in my opinion, right? For what it was at the time, for like the talent and everything. I mean, LSU was a depleted roster when Brian Kelly first got hired.
Correct.
I mean, who would have known? I mean, obviously they've turned it around decently quickly as far as replenishing talent. But I mean, I think that Alabama is definitely a more attractive job. Do you know anything about the Western Kentucky offensive coordinator or Kansas?
I just know that they had co-offensive coordinators this year. The thing is they put up good numbers this year, but with all due respect, the numbers weren't anywhere close to what they were the year before with Zach Kittley.
Didn't they also? I feel like didn't one of Western Kentucky's offensive coordinators just leave for Washington State? Was that them? I thought
possibly.
That was.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure, but the numbers this year weren't as good as they were the year before.
Yeah,
they put up insane numbers the year before with Zappy. I mean, it was just really nuts. I mean, this year they were at 36.4 points per game. Last year they were at 44. Last year they were at 536 yards per game offensively. This year they were at 497.1, 7.2 yards per play last year, 6.7 this year. So they weren't as good this year. Now they lost players, obviously, but it wasn't as dynamic of an offense. So I think you'd be kind of living off of a reputation that's not necessarily built by them. Now, if you want to talk about, maybe go out and get Zach Kittley, he was a guy that was at Texas Tech. He's the OC at Texas Tech. I thought he did a nice job with them this year. Did a nice job with obviously with Western Kentucky. He was the guy that they brought from. He was Zappy's OC at in college, at Houston Baptist too, correct?
Yeah.
And then came with him to Western Kentucky. I don't know enough about him to say, but I think he'd be the guy you'd want to look at if you like Western Kentucky's offense the last couple of years, not the other guy. That's just my 2 cents. I'm not saying that's someone I would target. I don't know enough about him, Ryan, to say that. You've probably watched more film of his offenses because you watched Bailey Zappi for the NFL draft and stuff like that is what I'm referring to.
Yeah, it's very very air raid-ish, if you like that type of thing. I mean,
yes, so, very air raid-ish.
I mean, you'll get a lot of guys in space, which is great, but I don't know what your run game would look like with that.
The reality is, Ryan, they averaged 102.5 rushing yards per game in 2021.
Exactly.
Marcus Freeman's not bringing in an air raid coach who's going to do what like Mike Leach and Hal Mummy did. He's going to run. Yeah. You're wasting your best resource. The two things you can recruit as well or better than anybody in college football is the offensive line and tight ends. And an air raid is just not going to get the most out of either one of those positions, in my opinion. So now, are there air raid guys I'd look at? Sure. Guys from the Lincoln Riley School of Air Raid that want to run the ball and still do all those things, sure, I'll give those guys a look. But air raid is just not going to really be, to me, what Marcus Freeman's going to be overly interested in. Because it's the same reason I thought it was a bad hire for Wisconsin. Can you really recruit the athletes over and over and over to maximize that offense at a Wisconsin? I don't think so. Is that really what you want to build your offense around? Is receiver quarterback recruiting? Right. To the degree that you'd need to, I don't like it. Has there been an air raid team that's won a championship?
Trying to think. I guess you can argue that Sark has some air raid elements to his offense, but it's not a pure air raid. Obviously,
well, see, he's a pro style guy. He just took some elements like RPO elements to what they do. He's still very much a pro style guy. His schemes are very NFL pro style. Stuff like that. It's just the ISOs. He's about. They do RPO, downfield vertical RPOs as opposed to the behind the line RPOs. So he's adopted some principles, but he's to me very much a pro style guy in my view. But to your point, though, that's the closest you're going to find to that.
Yeah, because I mean, Oklahoma obviously never got it done. And
no,
I'm just trying to think.
I mean, Georgia's not an air raid team by any stretch of imagination. Bama's not. Clemson is not.
No.
I mean, they're a spread team. Auburn was not when they won with Cam Newton. Ohio State was not. They're a spread team. So yeah, we haven't seen a team have that kind of success, in my opinion. Jim Halloran with Super Chat. Thank you, Jim. What are your thoughts about David Cutcliffe as OC? Coach both Eli and Peyton, had good offenses at Duke. He had good offenses at Duke until the last few years.
Yeah.
And I love David Cutcliffe, Ryan. And I made the case in 2017 when Chip Long got fired. Maybe something to do was to bring in a David Cutcliffe, let Tommy groom under him for a couple years, and then Tommy asserts the position.
Yeah,
but that's not the move. He's a bridge to something else, in my opinion.
I don't think the timelines mesh, right? Like, I just don't think he's at the spot in his career would make a lot of sense. I mean, I would love to just sit down and talk to David Cutcliffe for a couple hours, but I just don't think it's the right fit where he is in his career.
If I could bring him in to do for my offense what the Texas team staff is getting out of Gary Patterson on defense, like as an analyst, someone that can kind of groom my coaches and be a sounding board for my ideas and maybe do some advanced scouting. Absolutely, I would love to have David Cutcliffe on my staff. Love it, love it. I just don't know if we're at the point now where on field is the way to go. That's just the thing for me. But I'll tell you what, if I'm Marcus Freeman and I had any chance to get him on staff as an analyst, I would do it. I would absolutely do it. I mean, he's a great guy. I mean, it's just a great resource to have.
Yep.
We have a super chat here from Chamgel. Feelings on co-OCs. If Rees leaves, I could see Freeman circling back on Jamarcus Shepard, making him co-OC play caller, and Dylan McCullough as co-OC run game coordinator. I could see that. I think for me, I think in order to get Jamarcus Shepard to Notre Dame, I think you'd have to probably make him probably full OC, but as long as he's the play caller, maybe. But here's the thing. What's he going to coach?
I was going to say, can he coach quarterbacks? Like, I mean, because you already have your wide receiver coach, obviously, right?
Right.
I mean, I really do like Jamarcus Shepard, and he was at Washington this year, so he's got a little bit of that in the back of his mind.
He was who I wanted to be the receivers coach. I love what Chancey Stuckey's done, but Chancey Stuckey was a risk to me. Yeah, because he hadn't really coached before, but for 1 year. But Jamarcus Shepard's the guy that I wanted. There's no doubt about it. And obviously, he's learned under Jeff Brom. He learned under, obviously, his passion under Kalen DeBoer. My only concern there would be is I would definitely try to bring him in for an interview. I would just want to know what his plans are for the run game, because he's been a part of two offenses now in a row that don't really run the football that much. Is that because that's what the guys that design the offense want to do? What would you want to do? Because, look, I've been on offenses, Ryan, where I coached the heck out of what the head coach or what the OC wanted, but it's not what I would have done if I was running the offense, right? So you can't say for sure that he doesn't believe in it the way that they don't believe in it. That's the thing.
I'm just trying to formulate in my head how it would work from a position coach perspective. Right. Like maybe Jared Parker's the quarterback coach, and then he can coach tight ends because it's a little less of a daunting thing. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, because Jared Parker's never coached tight ends. He played or quarterbacks. He's only ever coached receivers or tight ends.
Oh, he didn't coach quarterbacks. Oh,
no,
I guess I'm mistaken.
No, he was the receivers coach at West Virginia and at Penn State and at Duke and at Purdue. He was receivers and tight ends. He played receiver in college. So, I don't know how that would work. I don't know how that would work. And that's the thing that makes this a challenge is, you got a pretty good offensive staff coming back. So if you're going to bring in an offensive coordinator that's not a quarterback's coach, you're going to have to figure something out.
Is Jamarcus just coached wide receivers? That's all
he's only ever coached wide receivers. Yeah. I'm going to pull it up again. He's coached inside receivers. He played receiver in college. He's a Fort Wayne native. So, I mean, there's a lot to be attracted by, but he was a receivers coach at Northrop High School, receivers coach at Broad Ripple High School. Then he got out of coaching for a little while, got back into coaching in 2011. Looks like he was a defensive assistant. It looks like it says here for Western Kentucky for 2 years. It says DA. I assume that means defensive assistant. But he then was the quality control on offense in 13. He was a receivers coach in 14, 15, 16. Then he moved on to be the pass game coordinator, receivers coach at Purdue for a year. Then he was the co-OC and wide receivers coach for 4 years at Purdue after that. And then this past year, he's the assistant head coach, pass game coordinator, and receivers coach at Washington. So, I mean, I just don't think that would make sense. Now, like if Chancey Stuckey up and left to go back to Clemson or something like that, which there's no rumors of, I'm just making a point, then that would open that up. But I've heard nothing about Chancey Stuckey leaving, nor do I want him to leave at this point in time. You know what I mean? Like I'm happy with the job he's doing and all that. So I just don't know. Like I feel good about it if you just take out the position coaching aspect of the conversation, but you can't do that. You'd have to say who's going to coach quarterbacks at that point in time. You know, Dylan McCullough's not coaching quarterbacks. Chancey's, I mean, you know, honestly, the guy that would be most qualified to coach quarterbacks on the staff would be Chancey Stuckey.
True.
Because he played
he was a high school quarterback.
And he played quarterback for a year at Clemson before moving over to wide receiver. So
that's funny. That's funny.
Now
let Harry coach quarterbacks.
Yeah, I know, right? That would so not go well. That would so not go well. Let's just say quarterbacks don't take to screaming as much as other guys. But hey, look, Chancey Stuckey played quarterback as a freshman at Clemson, threw 21 career passes and 2 touchdowns. So, I mean, but seriously, like, could he do that? I don't know. I don't know. I mean, it's interesting. Dylan McCullough as the run game coordinator, OC. I mean, okay. I mean, that's fine. That's fine. If that's what you got to do to keep him, that's fine. If he leaves, there's other running back coaches that would be good for the job as well. So that's it for the super chats, I think, Ryan. But we've got some. Actually, no. Here we go. Robert McReynolds says, I've been a Notre Dame fan since I can remember. I currently coach offensive line at a private school in Delaware. I will be the OC. Go Irish. There you go. All right. We've got the answer. I'm going to send that over to Coach Freeman now.
Send the resume, Robert.
Let him know. Let him know what's going on. So, yeah. So
make sure you have a nice cover letter in there. Okay. I need a practice plan ready for an example of what you're doing. Do it, man. Love it.
Yeah. So Ryan, let's kind of go. We got some other names. Let's just kind of go and just get some questions here, and we're just going to kind of turn this into a mailbag. Right now that we've kind of got through the Tommy Rees stuff, we're just going to turn this into a full mailbag. I know that a lot of this conversation is going to be geared towards Tommy Rees, and that's fine. But if you guys want to ask some other questions, we can kind of go down that route as well. And there's a lot of names being kind of thrown out. We'll kind of address those as we get to them. Moving forward here.
I think we did miss one super chat, Brian. If I could bring
Which
it up.
one?
It was from Ant VR.
Okay. Thank you, Anthony. So when you get a new OC, how does it generally work with position coaches? Does the new OC have some autonomy to bring guys in? I'll say this: if you're coming into a situation where you're sort of new and the staff is new, you're going to have some say. But Marcus Freeman would treat the offensive staff the same way he treated the defensive staff last year, which is one of the reasons a couple coaches didn't work out is because they wanted to bring in their own coaches. And he's like, you're not getting rid of Mike Mickens. You're not getting Chris O'Leary. These are the coaches. You're not getting rid of Mike Elson. Because remember at the time, that was kind of right before Mike Elson had left just yet. He hadn't quite left yet, although it was starting to happen as they got into it. But there was, hey, you're not replacing these guys. The only reason that Notre Dame replaced so many coaches on offense is because guys left. Lance Taylor got a promotion and John McNulty got a promotion. Otherwise, it just would have been replacing the 2 coaches that got fired. That was it. And so, no, you're probably not going to give that. I mean, you may want to like ask guys like, hey, what are your thoughts on this? And if a guy says, yeah, I'd like to bring my O-line coach, then you just kind of shake his hand and pat him on the back and say, best of luck to you somewhere else. Maybe that tells you, I mean, it's a trick question, Ryan, to kind of get a guy to find out if a guy's really got the chops or not. Oh, you want to not have Harry Heastand? All right, cool. Peace out. But in all seriousness, no, he's not going to bring in his own guys, in my opinion, until guys leave. You're going to want to say, hey, look, you got to work with what we have because we have a pretty damn good staff. That's the second time I've said that this week. I am really sorry. You got a pretty darn good staff. But you're not going to do that. You're going to work with the guys that he has. Because we've seen, and we know that because Marcus Freeman did that exact same thing on defense last year.
Yeah.
It was, no, this is who you're going to work with. You'll have autonomy to help bring in guys when there's openings, but this is the staff that we're working with. Let's go to the next one here. We got from John A1. He says, if Rees also hits the road, what does that mean for Sam Hartman? And does Bama do their best to poach Tyler Buckner? I mean, maybe. I don't know. I just think sometimes, John, we put too much on that these players are just going to follow the coaches all over the place. That happened, with like one coach last year? That was Caleb Williams going to Oklahoma. Doesn't normally work that way unless a guy's leaving for a head coaching job. Could they say it? Sure.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't see it. I don't know if Sam Hartman's enrolled in classes. So could he transfer again? Yeah, he could. He's a graduate. So once you graduate, you can transfer whenever the heck you want. I don't think there's a rule that would keep Sam Hartman here. Now, he can't transfer to Bama in the spring. That's already passed. It'd have to be something where he goes in the fall. But
And Brian, I would say this too. I mean, Alabama was, in the transfer market a little bit, right? Like they were talking with Drake May and doing all that type of stuff, but they didn't land a transfer this offseason, right? So, I mean, are they willing to take heart? I don't know. I just don't know what their market is for the quarterback or if they like what they have in the room. I mean, we could sit here and say, like, maybe you shouldn't be as confident, but maybe they like, after not getting a Drake May, they like what they have in the room. So I think there's a lot of layers to that. It's also, would Tyler Buckner want to go to Alabama? Like, I don't know. I don't know that conversation, right? There's just a lot of moving parts to that question that we just don't know.
I just think people sometimes assume too much when it comes to just assuming that somebody's going to leave just because a coach did.
Right.
So we'll see. We'll see. All right, let's get down to some more here. We've got let's go down here to Zach Martin. He goes, do you think Dylan McCullough is ready for an OC job if one presented itself at Notre Dame or elsewhere? I don't know enough about Dylan McCullough as a coach to know that. I just know he's never been a coordinator, and he's 49 years old. So up to this point in time, no one's given him that opportunity. And I think there's a stigma that comes with running back coaches that they don't quite have the all-around chops to be a coordinator. Fair or not, I think that's the stigma.
Yep.
And so, because you kind of live in this little universe as a running backs coach, right? I don't necessarily think that's fair, but that's the stigma. So that's partly my point is that partly explains why he hasn't gotten an offensive coordinator job yet. Does that mean he's got the chops or not? Honestly, Zach, I couldn't tell you. I know he's really good at being a running backs coach, but I've said this a million times. Just because you're a good position coach doesn't mean you're a good coordinator. Just because you're a good coordinator doesn't mean you be a good head coach. Just because you're a good head coach doesn't mean you be a good coordinator, right? And goes all the way around. And some guys are really good coordinators, but not great head coach or not great position coaches, right? Because they can coordinate and scheme, but they can't really teach a position at a high level.
Yep.
So I honestly couldn't tell you. I really couldn't tell you. So, Ryan, I don't know if you have an opinion on this or not.
I mean, I don't. I mean, because we don't have any proof, right? Like, we don't have any statistics. We don't have a resume to say, like, yeah, it definitely would be a good offensive coordinator because he's done this, right? He's been a run game coordinator. He's been an offensive coordinator at some smaller school. Like, we don't have any data points on it. I think that he's a very good recruiter. I think he's a great running back coach. But to your point, Brian, like, until we know, we don't actually know. I mean, it's like the Brian Hartline thing. I see everyone just throwing Brian Hartline in the chat, and I get it. And I mean, I would entertain it for sure, but I also don't know if Brian Hartline's a great offensive coordinator. Like, I have no idea. He's a great receiver coach, great recruiter, but like, is he a great offensive coordinator? I have no idea.
Right. Agree. All right, let's get down here to some more. Jeff DeMonk says, Brian, how about the angle of Saban getting close to retirement in a couple years? Could Rees be looking at that succession plan? Just a question. So there's two ways for me to take your question, Jeff. One is to look at it from the standpoint of, do you want to go there if the head coach is going to leave? If that's the angle to look at it, then yes, you would, because I don't think Tom Rees is going there thinking he's going to be there very long. I mean, if you're making this move, Ryan, you're going there because you're going to go there, you're going to win a bunch, and then move on and get that head coaching job or NFL OC job or whatever his career aspirations are, right? I mean, that's why you make this move. So I don't think it'd be that type of thing. I don't think it'd be that type of thing. Now, the other way to look at it is Is he looking at it as he could be the next head coach at Alabama? I doubt Tommy Rees is that presumptuous. So, I doubt that would be the angle he'd look at, Ryan. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
I mean, not entirely. I mean, I think that the track of getting to a higher position is definitely the big plus there, right? I mean, like that's what I guess I just don't have a huge opinion. I don't know if Tommy's like, behind the scenes, like, oh, this is the time to do it because Saban's nearing the end. Like, I just think that it's Nick Saban calls, Alabama calls, right? Like that's something that you explore. Like, I don't think that there's anything deeper level to that. I think it's just simply when Alabama calls, you listen.
Right.
Does it mean that you take the job? That's not necessarily it, but yeah.
Here's the next one from 99 Problems, but BK ain't one. This is in line with what you just said, Ryan. He goes, two-part question. He goes, number one, very behind the show, but is there any chance that Tommy's taking the interview because, one, you can't say no, and two, you can use this to advance your brand by saying no? And then three, Tommy can use this as recruiting fuel on the trail. Number 2 and 3 would be byproducts of him turning it down.
Right.
I don't think Tommy Rees would in any way, shape, form, or fashion do this knowing he's saying no just to use it against Nick Saban. That's not the bridge you want to burn. And in that way, that's disrespectful, in my opinion. I would not encourage him to do that. From what I was able to gather before the show started, that's not what's happening. Number one is true. It's Nick Saban, it's Alabama. You can't say no, right? I mean, that's just where they are. Will he take the job? We'll find out. Now, if he turns it down because he legitimately decides he wants to stay at Notre Dame, then 2 and 3 become true. But I don't think he's doing this to do 2 and 3 in my place, Ryan. I don't think Tommy, say what you want about him. I view that as disrespecting the profession, in my opinion. And I think he has a little bit more respect for the profession than that. I just don't think you do that. You don't interview for a job. You don't have a school fly their plane up from Tuscaloosa, fly you down there, meet with the greatest coach of your generation, knowing you're just going to say no and then use that against him. I don't think he'd do that. Now, could you, if he would have turned him down, like if he would have said, hey, coach, I appreciate the interest, but I'm going to stay at Notre Dame and then go that way, then you use those things to your favor to push your program, but you've told the coach no already and you use those two things that way. You talk to people in the media, hey, just so you know, I got offered this job and I've turned it down. I'm staying because this is where I want to be. And then you use it that way. But you don't go through the whole process of going down there and doing all that, to do that. So, and somebody says, why are we assuming Tommy Rees will even get offered the job? Trust me, he'll get offered the job. Like, he's going to get offered the job. They're not flying a guy down there and then not offering him. You know what I mean? Exactly. Like, it's just, we're past that.
It's not like he's taking a phone call. Like they want him to come down.
Bama wants Tommy Rees. The only thing left right now is to determine whether or not Tommy Rees wants Bama. That's where we're at. That's where we're at. So there is no other angle to this one.
Right.
There's no other angle to this one. So and there's no wife, there's no kids, none of that's being taken into consideration like it might be for another coach. Like it was for Marcus Freeman when he was thinking about where he was going to go to be the D coordinator. Part of the reason he didn't go to LSU and chose Notre Dame was wife, family, didn't want to go down that far south. Tommy Rees doesn't have that same thing. It's like, okay, I'm not going to live as close to my dad and my mom and my, other people in my life, but he doesn't have those same things. It's just going to be, does he want to take this leap or not? That's what it's going to boil down to. And if he does, then he'll leave. If he doesn't, then he'll stay. And if he leaves, then okay, go find the next guy. And that'll be the aspect of it. Let's get to some more questions here, Ryan. He says, Brian Dembo, would you want an up-and-coming coach or someone established?
It depends who they are. I mean, what do we define as established? I don't think there's a set number of years that I need. Like, I don't need a guy to be a 10-year offensive coordinator. I don't need necessarily be a 5-year offensive coordinator. I need to be able to talk to him face-to-face and then to have a legitimate plan and understanding of where we're going, right? Like, that's my biggest thing. So, I mean, I don't know if you agree with that or disagree with it, Brian, but I don't think that there's a number on the number of years that you have been an offensive coordinator. I just don't know if there is, right? I think that there is that legitimate conversation, and I need to have a thorough understanding of what is your plan, what do you believe in, how can you be successful here? That's what I need to know, and I need to understand the fit. I don't necessarily need a guy that's been there, OC for 12 years. I need a guy that I believe in personally.
Clark Lee had zero proven experience. He was an up-and-coming coach. And Notre Dame went undefeated, and he did a really good job that first year, right? My stance has been clear from day one, Ryan. If you got the chops, got the chops. Exactly. I know guys that have been coordinators for decades, and they're just kind of okay. Yeah. And you see guys get jobs that have never called plays before, and, man, they turn out to be great. So it really comes down to that for me. Yep. If you got the chops, you got the chops. That's it. So who do I want? I want a guy that can do the job the best. That's it. And that's it may be, Brian, it may be an experienced guy. It may be some veteran who wants to come take the job. It may be an up-and-coming guy. I don't know the answer to that. I just know the guy needs to be able to coach at a high level. He needs to be able to teach at a high level. He needs to be able to scheme at a high level. And he's got to be a guy that can work with the staff at a high level. And then at the end of the day, the last part of this is he's got a guy that can call plays at a high level.
And recruit. Don't forget recruit.
That's a given. Yeah. Yes, that's a given. Or at least, and again, he doesn't have to be a great recruiter. He has to be willing to recruit.
Yes.
There's a difference. Yes. Because part of being sometimes a great recruiter like Harry Hiestand is not a great recruiter. He gets great recruiting results. What I mean by that is he's not a great recruiter from the standpoint of the grind that so many of these other great recruiters do, where they're just on the phone all the time. They're doing this, and they're doing that, and they're doing all these type of wild things. That's not Harry Hiestand. Harry Hiestand just says, I want that guy. I'm going to use my track record to say I'm going to go get that guy. And it just that's how it goes. The results are there. Let's use David Shaw as an example. If David Shaw came and said, look, as the OC, I don't have to recruit like I did as a head coach. And we had so many issues at Stanford, and it just got to the point where it's like, what are we even doing here? We can't get 90% of these kids anyway. Like all those things that people said about Notre Dame, about academics, have been true at Stanford the last 4 or 5 years, flat out. But here's what I'll do. I don't want to be on the road all the time, but I will be on the phones. I will sell the heck out of my vision when these kids are on campus. When we go on the road, I'll be on the road like everybody else, but I'm just not going to be that grinder. I'm going to be the closer. All right, fine. But the product you put on the field better darn well sell that. And that's my point. Same with Joe Brady. If Joe Brady wanted that, like, hey, I'll be a closer, but okay, then you better put a great product on the field. Tommy Rees has been able to grind and work hard as a recruiter, which has helped overcome the fact that the results on the field haven't always been great. You got to have one of those two things, Ryan. Now, you can't be allergic to recruiting, but you don't necessarily have to be Chip Long or Tommy Rees to be an effective recruiter if the results are good enough. And that's kind of the way I look at it. You know what I mean? So it's getting the job done.
Yep.
Yeah. All right, let's get to some more here. We've got one from John A1. On the defensive line, Mills and Patelho have to step up and play at a star level with star production 23 class production for 23 to be a success. I don't think they have to play like stars. I think that'd be pretty good. You give me 4 really good players, but none are stars on the D-line, I'm going to have a pretty darn good D-line. I'd rather have 2 stars and 2 guys that are pretty darn good. That's ideal.
Sure.
But I don't think I don't think it's a must that 2 guys play like stars. I think they have to have really good production as a unit. And John, sometimes you can have 2 stars and not a very good defensive line if everybody else isn't producing. The production has to be elite. I don't think an individual player has to be elite, in my view.
Well, I think that one thing I agree 100% with John is that both those players need to step up tremendously, right? Like you need the best versions or near the best versions of those players. Like they don't need to be stars. I agree with you, Brian, but they need to be more productive and obviously more dependable and consistent than they were in this past year for different reasons for each player, right? But I think that those 2 guys have a ton of potential. And we talked a lot about Riley Mills the other day. He's got a lot of talent, and there's still a lot that he can – there's still a much higher ceiling that he can hit, in I think both of our opinions. And Jordan Botelho brings some talent to the field that you need. You need that versatility he has. You need the twitchiness he has as a pass rusher. And if both of those step up tremendously, then the defensive line that seems like a bit of a concern for some, I think it quickly turned into a very surprising unit. So I'm very hopeful for both players, and Notre Dame needs them in 2023. There's no doubt.
Right. Like if Jordan Patel has 6 sacks and Josh Burnham has 4.5, and Aiden Gobyron, Junior Tuihalamaka combined for like 3, that's elite production from the position, even though one guy wasn't a star.
Yep.
And so there's a lot. Would it be great if you had a Will Anderson and a Jalen Carter and 2 really good players alongside them? Sure, I'll take that. Just don't think it's necessarily a must. That would be my thing. All right, next question here from Double Down. B. Ryan, would you guys prefer an NFL guy or someone that runs more of the modern day spread college offense? Well, I think
who they are.
There's I could give you an answer that it's neither. I don't know that I care that Notre Dame go to a spread offense, a college spread offense like a Clemson, like an Ohio State, back under Urban Meyer. I want a balanced offense. I'm a pro style guy personally. Pro style doesn't equal NFL guy. Pro style is just a way to describe more traditional sets, more traditional motions and shifts, play action, isolations, levels, concepts. I mean, it's just more of it's a different type of system. Spread is more, it is what it is. You spread it out. You're a lot of 10, 11 personnel, things like that. I want a guy that's really good at what he does. That's the thing, Ryan. We can get into NFL guy, college spread guy, college pro style guy, college whatever. Is he good at his job or not? Can he do all the things we talk about? You guys can keep asking us, and there's nothing wrong with the question. You can keep asking us what we want, but the reality is I can tell you what I prefer, what I like, but I also could tell you there's a lot of different types of offenses that have been really good in college football. Give me a guy that can create a really good offense and recruit the talent that'll fit at what Notre Dame's trying to do, and I'm going to be happy. It doesn't have to be what my personal preference would be.
Yeah. We all have our preferences, right? We all have our biases. I prefer to win a championship. So whatever that is, it could be a spread, it could be an air raid, it could be a triple option. I don't care.
Look, Ryan, at what offenses have or have not been able to compete for championships. And I think that has to be part of the conversation.
Sure.
You say, well, hey, I think we can run a triple option and win a championship. Disagree. I think we can run an air raid at Notre Dame like they did at West Kentucky and run for 102 yards a game. No, I don't think you can win that way. Right. So I do think that there are certain types you need to be mindful of. Okay, that system won't work at Notre Dame because you can't recruit that type of players to Notre Dame. That's my whole thing is you have to find something that fits what you have on the roster and what you can recruit to the roster. And there's not one offense that does that, is my point. You know what I mean? And that's the key. And so, yes, I want to win a national championship, but a big part of the decision for Coach Freeman is let's find a system, a guy that can really do the job incredibly well. And then let's find a guy that can also run a system that fits what we do have and what we can get. And that's the key. And certain systems aren't going to be effective. They're for championships. A lot of teams that do the air raid, it's kind of a gimmicky thing. They know there's limitations to it.
Yeah.
They know there's limitations to it, but it's also going to get you to a certain point, just like the triple option. The triple option is going to help you win certain things if your talent is to a level below, but you're also guaranteeing if you go to the triple option that you're not going to recruit, you're not going to have the same talent on your team as you had before. This happened to Georgia Tech. Stop being able to get big time skill players after a while because
Wire and
you stop losing, you stop getting those guys because they don't want to go play in that offense. And then the new coach comes in and you're behind the 8 ball when it comes to the talent that you have. So that's where I look at it.
I selfishly do want to just see Audrey Estimé as a dive back. I do. I want to see.
Okay, well then you can just have a wrinkle like you had against Syracuse a couple times.
Or I can play NCAA 23 or 24 whenever that comes out.
But in real life, no. Let's see here. John A1 has a 2-part question. Notre Dame tried to maintain staff continuity last year, and soon after there was a mass turnover with Elston, Taylor, McNulty, Lazinski all finding new places of employment. How difficult will it be for Freeman to maintain the direction of the program with another mass coaching overhaul if he hires an OC from the outside? First of all, I don't view one OC as a mass overhaul.
Yeah.
And perhaps John is alluding to the fact that, maybe a new OC from the outside brings his own guys, but that will then go back to what we had talked about earlier. John's question came in before we answered that question, Ryan.
Sure.
But I don't think that they would then – that guy's not going to come in with the opportunity to turn over the offensive staff. It's not happening.
Yep.
And so to me, it would be, hey, let's figure out who's going to come in and work with what we have and work at a high level with what we have. That would be the key to me. And you have to figure that part out. That's so it won't be mass turnover.
Yeah. And it's not like Marcus Freeman would be dealing with mass turnover twice either, right? He was to be hired as the head coach. Right. Like, you're going to bring in some new guys. It just kind of is what it is. So I understand the premise of your question, John. I am all for continuity, and I'm all for consistency and all that great stuff, right? But to Brian's point, one offensive coordinator is not a mass overhaul. It might be a mass overhaul I don't even say that. I would say like offensive scheme might be a mass overhaul, but not really, because you still want a guy that's going to place some basic principles, right, that you kind of believe in. So I don't consider it that way, but I definitely do think that you want continuity as much as possible, because some of the best programs have been built off of continuity. It's not always that way, but you want that. You don't want a ton of coaching turnover year to year if you don't have to.
Right. But if you're going to have turnover, you want it to be because guys are getting big time promotions, because then that makes your jobs a lot more attractive. What was the main reason we pointed to Tommy Rees taking this job? It's because look at what the guys before him got. You start kind of developing that reputation, then all of a sudden you've got more qualified coaches that want to come work for you. And then, yes, there's turnover from year to year. You lose 2 to 3 coaches a year, but your ability to replace them with high-level guys is increased when you have that kind of success, because turnover is going to happen. Absolutely. You want to make sure it's not mass turnover, right? That's never good. Even if it's just because you just won a national championship and you lost 7 coaches, that's not good, because it's going to hurt you next year. But you can get back on track, but it's not ideal. We got 2 little super stickers from John Dillon. Thank you very much for those, John. There you go. There's one. There is the other. Appreciate you very, very much. Milton Fan 15 as a super chat. Thank you very much. What defensive scheme would get the most talented, productive players on the field at once? There isn't one. This goes back to the question we were talking. There isn't one system that puts the best players on the field at once. And if there was, everybody would try to run it. You can win in football in a lot of different defensive schemes, a lot of different offensive schemes. There are some I don't think you can win with, right? Like, you could try to run a 2-5-4 if you wanted to. And you can try it. It's probably not going to work, right?
It's beautiful.
But there's a lot of different systems. Not all of them can, but a lot of different systems can work. What Georgia does defensively to have success is one thing, and what other teams have done to have success defensively is another. What Georgia does offensively that's successful is different from what Bama does. It's different from what Ohio State does. You got to find what you believe in. You've got to make sure that coach sticks to the principles that you believe in. You've got to make sure that they coach it up fundamentally at a high level. You got to make sure that they can scheme it, that they can teach it, that they can recruit, as Ryan said, and that you can recruit to that system at your particular job. Because you can't recruit. You can recruit certain players at USC that you just can't recruit if you're coaching at Purdue or Wisconsin, or you know what I mean? Like, it's just your different regions, different brands, all that stuff. Just recruit to what you have, and that's going to be the key.
Yep. Agree completely. I think that, again, this is our preferences, right? Like, I can make a great case right now that 4-2-5 with all the adjustments you can work off of it is the way to go. And then Brian could sit here and tell me, no, 3-3-5. A lot of adjustments off of that, right? And we're both not wrong necessarily. Right. It's just that it doesn't fit everyone, right?
And we could both pull examples of how what we're talking about has worked.
Yes.
That's the other thing, Ryan. Like, you could make your case for the defense you like, but look at team A, B, C, and D all did this level of success with it. And I could say, well, hey, I want to do this, and look at the success that this teams have had with it. And again, neither of us are wrong per se, but one of us may be wrong about what works at Notre Dame with the current roster, what you could recruit, those type of things, right? So if I said, hey, I want to run a 3-3-5, 2-gap defense, I don't think that works real well at Notre Dame. I don't think you can recruit
not with the players you have right now.
And I don't know if you can recruit enough. You can recruit a Justin Scott, but can you get me Justin Scott every year? I don't think you can.
Remains to be seen.
Because
yeah.
why is that true, Ryan? In a 3-3-5 two gapping defense, you need at least two guys that are just 300 plus pounds that can just dominate
with length.
Well,
yep.
Notre Dame had a grand total of one 300-pound defensive lineman on the entire roster last year, right? And so
he was a grad transfer from Harvard, right?
Okay, two.
Oh, I forgot about Chris Smith.
Anna is yes. Yeah, I forgot about Chris because when Chris Smith signed, he wasn't 300 pounds. He got pumped up to 300 pounds when he got here. The point is, you don't even have a two deep to be able to do that. In all honesty, you should have at least all three of your guys should be over 290 pounds. And so, okay, well, that version of 3-3-5 may not work as well. But say, okay, I like the 3-3-5, but I like a penetrating 3-3-5. So, okay, well, that may work better here. But if I wanted to do that 3-3-5 at Georgia, I'd have a lot more success with it.
Yeah.
Because I can get those 3 butt kickers, those massive butt kickers up front.
Yes.
And so that's the thing is you've got to – what can you recruit to at that school? And so if I were to have this argument with Ryan, let's say Georgia was running a 3-3-5 with just like Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis. I mean, just the big monsters
Devontae
they have.
Wyatt,
and it was working really well, right? Yeah. I said, well, look what Georgia did. They did this, and this. Well, Ryan's rebuttal would be what? Yeah, but you can't recruit. You don't have those guys in Notre Dame.
Where's your Jalen Carter would be my first
Who's your
response.
Jordan Davis? Right. Who's exactly. Because you need that guy to be able to run that defense at a championship level.
Yep.
And so that's the thing is we have our preferences, things that we like, but what Ryan likes on offense isn't the only way to win a championship. What I like on offense isn't the only way to win a championship. Same on defense. There's lots of different ways to do it. You just have to be good at it, hire the right staff, recruit the right players, teach them, have a good strength program, and make sure you can recruit to it. I mean, that's really what it boils down to. We're going to get the last few here, and then I'm going to wrap it up here. We got to get rolling here. Jim Halloran says, do you need to be mindful about how an OC would get along with Harry Hiestand? Heck yes. Absolutely, Jim. No, that's a very good question, Jim, and absolutely. Absolutely, you do.
I mean, because like, what's the proof as far as him coming back, right? It's because Harry had to be comfortable coaching with certain people, right? Like he wasn't comfortable coaching with the previous staff. And the only reason he came back is because he bought into Marcus and the rest of the people on the staff and Tommy, obviously, and everybody, right? So, yeah, I mean, sometimes it's hard for change, right? And sometimes it's hard for people's personalities to mesh appropriately, right? And Harry Hiestand is someone that you need to keep here as long as possible.
Yes.
So make him happy with your hire because he's not going to turn away a good coach just because he's being stubborn, right? It's just about the right guy, the right fit.
Yeah. Hey, can we stop with the Warner Giro comments because of Sam Hartman? If Sam Hartman loved playing that offense, he'd still be at Wake Forest.
Do not bring that stupid mesh here, please.
Like, that's the whole thing. Like, that's why he left Wake Forest. He was at a Power 5 conference that won 11 games a year ago, right? He wants to get away from the mesh. So yes.
I saw someone say Josh Gaddis too. Give me a break.
The guy that just got fired at Miami?
Yeah.
Hard pass. Hard pass. Hard pass. So, Ryan, I think that is going to do it for this show here today. We're going to get rolling here. We'll do D-line next week. Listen, tonight at 8:00, I'm going to launch a video that Ryan has done already. The first couple weeks, we're going to have them recorded. Ryan, you did. You want to kind of introduce people to the new show, what we're going to be doing, and just what tonight's topic is going to be about?
Yeah. So Rise and NFL Draft podcast on the CFB Nation network and presented obviously by Irish Breakdown. Started the show. I recorded it earlier today. We'll be dropping at 8:00, like Brian said. I worked through a bunch of the Senior Bowl risers so far this week over the first couple days. And then also, if you're on the message board at boards@irishbreakdown.com, right below me, I also made a post last night asking for a bunch of mailbag questions. So there's 2 parts to this conversation. One will be Senior Bowl risers. The other will be the question and answer segment. So I hope you guys enjoy it. It was 45 minutes of just me talking by myself. So I hope you enjoy it very much.
And then that'll be a regular thing on Thursday nights. And then eventually we're going to make those live. So that's the first show that we're going to introduce here moving forward. We're going to have some more that are going to be coming out. So make sure you stay tuned to those. Tomorrow we'll have a mailbag. We'll do our weekly mailbag on Friday. We're going to start at 1:00. We were going to get started later because there was supposed to be a player interview session tomorrow, which they have moved back, obviously, with the news that's going on. Because what do you think the players have got asked about tomorrow, Ryan? What do you think Sam Hartman would have got asked by every freaking media person tomorrow? Like, what's the deal with Tommy Rees? You going to leave? So smart decision by Notre Dame to move that back to next week.
They would ask Sam Hartman how he's enjoying the cold weather so far.
Yes,
how you doing with that, sir?
Right. Yeah. So how much did you love the mesh? So yeah. Hard pass. So anyway, we will get started on time tomorrow, 1:00. Make sure you folks hit that like button before we leave, hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell, share this podcast, sign up for the message boards at boards.irishbreakdown.com. If you're signed up if you're listening via podcast app, please, we would love it if you give us a 5-star review. Would appreciate that very, very much. And of course, check out our message board at, I said this, at boards.irishbreakdown.com. Sign up for our newsletter where you can get all of our free content, and that you can find that in all of our stories. You can also find it in the description box below. And remember, all of our content that comes in the newsletters, all of our free content. So, and at irishbreakdown.com, all that content is free. So you definitely want to check that out and helps continue to support us at Irish Breakdown. So thanks for joining us, everybody. We'll get back to the position sort of overviews next week. We'll talk about the D-line next week. We'll probably have a lot to talk about this Saturday. You never know, Ryan. We might have a special recruiting show here coming up over the next few days. Who knows? You never know. We'll have to see. So anyway, thanks for being with us, everybody, and joining us on the Irish Breakdown podcast.